mist-free, but it's going to be a blustery start to Friday. Areas of cloud moving south, some light showers for many places. The most frequent showers will be affecting the far north of Scotland. The wind will be feeling cold, with that wind strongest along the North Sea coast. And there'll be some big waves along the North Sea coast as well. Showers by the afternoon confined to the east of England. Elsewhere, brighter spells emerging, some sunshine and highs of 14 or 15 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M8 in Edinburgh is down to a single lane westbound after an accident between junctions 2 and 3 from the M9 to Livingston. It's taking around half an hour in the queues. The M65 in Lancashire is partly blocked eastbound by an accident between junctions 2 and 3 towards Blackburn. Delays in both directions. On the M56 in Cheshire, the inside lane's closed eastbound for emergency repairs after a lorry caught fire yesterday evening between junctions 14 and 12 towards Runcorn, causing long delays. On the A48M in Cardiff, the outside lane's closed southbound for repairs at St Mellons after an accident yesterday with queues there too. In Somerset, the A361 is closed each way between Dean and Leighton after an accident. Train services between Andover and Salisbury are diverting via Southampton because of a gas leak, and delays of up to an hour to the FDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Tubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations? Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where. We need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. They could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is, what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and...
Irritating? It'd be disastrous. It would destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primus stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles. Absolutely. They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead at, actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country.
9:30 on Thursday, the 18th of April. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Carol Malone.
And another Rwanda setback. The House of Lords has delayed the passing of the government's Rwanda bill until next week. Will this political ping-pong ever end?
Shocking in Scotland. Scottish primary schools are appointing children as LGBT champions and being encouraged to ask pupils as young as 4 if they're gay, lesbian or trans. Wicked, frankly.
And we'll be joined by the transgender marathon runner who has competed as a man, a woman, and a non-binary runner. She'll be at the London Marathon this weekend too.
And goodbye to Britain. Don't say good riddance, Malone. Prince Harry declares the United States to be his new country of residence. What will his family think? Relief, I would think.
OK. Is that me or you? I'll do it. Can a leopard change its spots? Teenage TikTok prankster Mizzy issued a public apology to those who were affected by his online pranks last night. Speaking to Pastor Christie's. Take a listen.
I apologise to all the victims in the past that may have caused distress to, may have harassed, may have mentally tormented in any type of way.
We'd love to hear what you think. Send your views and post your comments by visiting GBNews.com. I'll say. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning. The top stories. An MP has given up the Conservative Party whip after claims he misused campaign funds. Mark Menzies is alleged to have used thousands of pounds of donations to fund his medical expenses, including £14,000 transferred to his personal bank accounts. The Times newspaper also reports he made a late-night phone call to an aide asking for help because he'd been locked up in a flat by what he described as bad people who were demanding £5,000 for his release. In a statement, Menzies has denied the allegations. He'll sit as an independent in the House of Commons while the claims are being investigated. The government has promised to do whatever it needs to do to get flights off the ground after Piers dealt another blow to the government's flagship Rwanda plan. The House of Lords ignored ministerial calls to back down and again last night insisted on further revisions to the bill. However, Defence Secretary Grant Shapps told GB News this morning the Rwanda plan is the deterrent the UK needs to stop illegal crossings into Britain.
Let's pass this Rwanda bill. Let's stop messing around, as Keir Starmer was telling his Lords to do last night, by chucking this out again. So the Commons is going to have to come back and vote on it. We've already voted for it numerous times, and let's actually break this illegal chain of people being brought here.
It's been revealed that UK aid funding has been invested in an overseas firm that backs a social media site with offers of sexual services and posts that promote the Hamas attack on Israel. MPs are demanding answers from Lord Cameron and the Foreign Office following the findings in a report from the Independent Commission for Aid Impact. More than £6 million of funding went to the India Quotient Fund last year. The watchdog is warning the UK faces a major reputational risk because of the findings. Despite concerns, the Foreign Office-owned institutional British International Investment has defended its investment, stating that robust content moderation is in place on the social media site and offensive content is removed. And Prince William is returning to official public duties today for the first time since the Princess of Wales revealed her cancer diagnosis. He's set to visit a food distribution charity in Surrey and then travels to West London to meet young people who benefit from the organisation's deliveries. He spent the past month with his wife and children during the Easter holidays. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce, and we've got Karen Malone in for Bev Turner. How are you?
Nice to see you, darling.
Very good to see you. So we're going to have a lively show, lots to talk about, and we are both, got to tell you, pretty exasperated by what's happening in Scotland with our children there, because can you believe this? Scottish primary kids schools are being encouraged to ask pupils as young as 4 if they're gay, lesbian or trans. Did you know what a trans person was when you were 4? Or a lesbian?
Never heard, wouldn't have known when I was 10 either. And I think this comes hot on the heels of the Cass report.
Yeah.
And Dr. Hilary Cass warned about young people and gender issues, and she said we have to exercise caution when talking to young people about gender issues because they're very susceptible.
Of course they are.
And here we are. Here we have Scotland, which seems obsessed by gender issues, I might add, asking kids as young as 4. It's crazy.
And this is all coming through a charity called LGBT Youth Scotland. And just if you are in Scotland, watching or listening, of course, you'll be pleased to know, I'm sure, that your hard-earned taxes go to fund this organisation. £1 million. And so the charity says that head teachers should install gender-neutral toilets to mark transgender day of remembrance
Do you know, it's interesting,
for 4-year-olds.
The gender-neutral toilets. There was a big story in Scotland last year where teenage girls would not use the trans toilets because boys were coming in and taking the mickey out of them when they were on their periods, going into their sanitary bins, messing around. So girls were not going to the toilet at school during the day because of this. And, you know, most parents would say they want to have separate toilets for the kids. Why can't you just have one toilet for transgender people?
And, of course, all this was a big factor in the demise of Nicola Sturgeon.
Well, of course.
Because of the trans... And also, don't forget, Scotland has brought in that new hate crime law, which has already had about 12, or is it 15, or is it 20,000 now? People have complained already.
Well, and especially about homo use stuff, isn't it?
The first one. Now, has the world gone mad? Let's talk to the co-director of For Women Scotland, Susan Smith, and GB News senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Susan...
Morning.
Good morning to you both. Susan, to you first. Carol and I are not easily shocked, but this, frankly, is shocking. These kids are far too young to be exposed to this sort of claptrap.
Well, frankly, LGBT Scotland should be nowhere near any schools. But the fact that they're in primary schools is especially shocking. They are not even... This is not even in their remit. So when they go out and look for funds, they are looking for... their stated aim is to deal with children in the age range of 13 to 25, so children and young adults. But they don't even claim to have any expertise in primary schools. And yet here they are trying to extend their reach, going into primary schools, grabbing them while they're young, much like the Jesuits used to, and trying to indoctrinate them with this frankly, this new secular religion.
And Susan, you know, the Scottish Government have already been warned about the promotion of ideology in the classroom, and yet they're choosing to ignore that. What can be done about that? Anything?
Well, I think parents need to get in contact with their schools, especially if they see that they're going for an LGBT youth charter scheme, and demand to know what they're doing and demand answers. We have information on our website about the toilet issue, because we have an opinion from a leading KC that says that this is not legal. This is contributing to the harassment of girls, as you said, in schools, and this should not be happening.
It's funny because I was just talking to peers before the show started that it is illegal to actually do this under the Equality Act. So they're breaking the law as well. You know, it's frightening, isn't it? Because young children are very susceptible, and there's a lot of peer pressure around now around the trans issue. So a child who may or may not be trans or gay or lesbian may feel they have to become one of those things to fit in.
Yes, and all these schools under the LGBT Youth Scotland scheme have these clubs, these rainbow clubs, and it's obviously even more appealing to young children, terribly glittery, terribly exciting, come and be allies, come and express yourself. And so they're going along to fight for a sense of belonging, and then they're coming out with these brand new identities. And of course, as we know now, Cass has said that this social transitioning is not a neutral act. So they are getting ever younger children to do this. In defiance of Cass, the Scottish Government is busy ignoring the findings of the Cass review. Now they're allowing this from one of their own organisations, because the Scottish Government, as you say, fund this organisation. And, you know, there's going to be a generation of children, frankly, at some point, who are going to need redress. And is that going to come from the government or LGBTU?
Susan, thanks. Let's bring Nigel Nelson into the conversation. Nigel, do you think this is a reasonable way to approach 4-year-old children?
Yes, provided that the initiative is age appropriate. So obviously it depends how it works. Now, if we're talking about words like indoctrination or encouraging them to be gay or trans, that would be wrong. The idea of actually normalizing sexuality from a young age, I would have thought is a positive thing. Because bear in mind, an awful lot of children nowadays will have 2 dads or 2 mums, so they're experiencing all this at home. So no harm then in making it a normal part of growing up at school.
But Nigel, how can you ask a 4-year-old to articulate whether they are gay, straight or transgender. How on earth can you do that?
Well, I don't think you can.
But this is what they're going to do. But this is what they're going to do, Nigel.
Are they? Are they
yes,
actually
they are.
turning around to 4-year-olds and saying to them, "Are you gay? Are you lesbian? Are you trans?"
And they're going to have an LGBT champion aged about 7 or 8 by their shoulder.
But that's my point about normalising things. The idea of an LGBT champion, again, seems to me fine. It's a question of making the whole thing normal. But what would be wrong would be to encourage it, to indoctrinate. Those are things that should not happen. But until we actually see how this initiative is actually working, we have to go from there. And I think Susan's right, that parents ought to have a hand in this and make sure that what is happening to their children is appropriate for that age group.
But Nigel, last week Hilary Cass said clearly in her report that social transitioning, which is what this is all about, could change the trajectory of a child's sexuality. They may feel that they should be doing it because their schoolmates are, because it's exciting, because it's new. So that is social transitioning of an ideology. It's crazy.
Well, hang on, but that's suggesting that children are being encouraged then to be being gay or trans or whatever. What I'm saying is that would be wrong. You don't encourage children to do that. What you're doing is you're normalising the whole thing. You talk about having gender-neutral lavatories in schools. Now, provided they are proper unisex lavatories, self-contained cubicles with their own washing and drying facilities, that would be...
Nigel, they haven't worked in some... They haven't worked in some...
Well, let's get Susan back in that. What is the point of gender-neutral loos for 4-, 5 and 6-year-olds?
I would say probably for younger children, they do have gender-neutral loos, so to be fair. But after the age of about 8 or 9, they have to be separate. And one thing I would say about LGBT Youth Scotland is we know what they are saying to secondary school pupils. And we have got on our website a transcript of training that they delivered at a secondary school in Scotland, and it is appalling. It's encouraging teachers to transition children behind their backs. It's talking about children
behind the backs of parents?
Not telling them,
Do you mean Susan, do you mean behind the backs of parents?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. And it's saying that children will kill themselves if they're not allowed to, with a jaunty picture of a noose. So we know that the training they're delivering to secondary schools is not appropriate and it's not legal. That is my big concern. I don't think what they will be doing in primary schools will be any more appropriate because they are not delivering appropriate education to secondary schools as it is. But yes, the toilet issue, as I say, we have an opinion from a Casey about what has been happening in the schools in Scotland where that has been put in. They are not proper gender-neutral loos with their own drying facilities.
Right.
They actually have a communal corridor in the middle with washing.
All right. Well, let's give Nigel the last word here because we're under pressure time. Nigel, just very briefly, do you still think it's appropriate to be having LGBT clubs and societies and organisations for children as young as 4, 5 and 6?
Yes, provided you make sure it is age-appropriate for that group. Well, we don't know that, do we? No, hang on. We don't know, Andrew. We don't actually know that. We don't know exactly how teachers are doing this, and that's my point.
Teach them to read and write, Nigel. Teach them to read and write and do their arithmetic, the 3 R's. Stop all this psycho babble.
Well, yeah, I'd do that as well. That children are there to be educated, but normalising sexuality.
Not indoctrinated, though. That's the difference.
I'm sorry, Karen, I missed that.
Not indoctrinated. Educated, yes. Indoctrinated, no.
Absolutely right. Indoctrination would be wrong. Encouragement would be wrong. Explaining would be right.
All right, look, always good to talk to you both. That's Susan Smith, who's co-director for Women's Scotland, and Nigel...
Nelson.
Nigel Nelson. I was going to call you.
You've known for 25 years.
I was going to call him Nigel Evans, the Deputy Speaker. Nigel Nelson, who is, of course, senior political commentator here for LBC. A Scottish Government spokesman released this statement. We're committed to doing everything we can to make Scotland the best place to grow up for LGBT+ young people.
I think you messed that up. This includes funding LGBT Youth Scotland to deliver a range of projects, such as the LGBT Charter programme.
LGBT Scotland are yet to comment on this story themselves. Up next, Rwanda. Guess what? Those members of the House of Lords, the unelected ones, they're the ones, they've delayed the Rwanda policy again. We're going to be talking to Lord Marlin, Conservative peer, shortly. You're with Britain's Newsroom.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
There is a kind of a Mediterranean side to that as well, because my mother came from that side, you know, a big family. And I think there is that sense of community where family is kind of key. And I think that's really kind of what we sort of try and continue, really. I mean, certainly with children and stuff like that, you know, Sunday lunches were always, you know, the big thing.
Yeah,
really.
But if you go down the Old Kent Road today...
Very different. Very different, yeah. And that was quite some time ago as well, because we were very close to where the Thomas Becket was.
Yeah, I know, the boxing upstairs and all the rest of it. Yep.
And I did go down there not so long ago, actually, and it really is very, very different. I mean, I'm not saying that's necessarily bad. I think we have a different view of things.
Most people in London, Nicky, don't even know the names of the next-door neighbours.
No, true.
We've completely lost that sense of community that you grew up with, that you knew. I think it's a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say sometimes I'm a bit guilty of it where I am now as well. You live in big houses, and I do see my neighbours, but, you know, it's not quite the same as it was back.
And I guess from that background, you're a teenager, you want to become a hairdresser.
Yeah,
that must have been quite a difficult call.
Yeah, that one was a really good call. My dad went, oh, God, what? I mean, it was just very funny. And certainly from the point of view of, you know, this was the early 70s. So it wasn't really the kind of the choice of most people would do.
No, but you did. Why?
I don't know, actually. I mean, I went to a grammar school and I didn't do as well in the final exams, and I was kind of forced into sort of leaving. And you suddenly go, ooh, no idea what to do here, really.
Yeah.
But the idea of doing something in fashion, and, you know, I really kind of... I know that I was given some really good advice, actually, by somebody that said, just start at the bottom. Don't necessarily go to, you know, college or whatever. Not that there may not be anything wrong with those, but just start at the bottom, go to the best place you can and start sweeping the floor.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, no surprise, those unelected members of the House of Lords have scuppered Rishi Sunak's Rwanda bill yet again. 2 more defeats inflicted last night. The bill will come back to the Commons next week. Is it ever going to be resolved?
Fourth time, isn't it?
At least. Joining us now is the Tory peer, Lord Marlin, who was there last night. Lord Marlin, morning to you.
And unelected, Andrew, and unelected.
Oh, he said it.
Yes, exactly. I did think there was an irony, Jonathan, I can call you by your first name, of course, that the unelected House of Lords said that Rwanda doesn't have a long tradition of democracy, nor does the House of Lords.
What a lovely way to start Thursday, Andrew.
How frustrating is it to be in the Lords when this is the elected will of the Commons? It is in the Tory government manifesto to try and curb illegal migration. They've chosen the Rwanda scheme to do it, and yet your colleagues on the Labour and Liberal Democrat benches keep voting this down.
And, of course, the crossbenchers.
Yeah,
well,
of course.
It's, you know, there are actually quite a lot of loose ends to this bill. I'm on the International Treaties Committee, so we look at the bill and go through it, and we've found quite a few loose ends, which I completely agree with, obviously, because we've done some very detailed research on it. And what happens in the Lords, of course, as you know, Andrew and Carol, that we we do scrutinise legislation, and the Commons don't. They come up with some brilliant idea and they don't scrutinise it. So this is part of the process of scrutinising it. As to your point about the unelected bit, you're completely right. I do think Des Brown, even though I voted against it because I'm on a three-line Tory whip, I do think Des Brown has got a point that people who have supported our soldiers in battle should be excluded from this particular.
This is the Afghan interpreters, Jonathan. The Afghan interpreters. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I thought they already were.
And actually, we were told by the Laws Minister that they were going to give in on that, to be honest. But they didn't. Commons didn't, and government didn't. So I was slightly surprised by that. And I rather hope they do, between you and I and all our viewers, so it'll go around quite a lot.
Lord Marland, this is...
But I think, sorry, Carol, just to finish on the other point, which is, having planes not taking off before a committee of experts are satisfied themselves that Rwanda have fulfilled their obligations is really, really asking a bit too much, and actually fails to understand anything about Rwanda, and actually, despite the fact that I think have a huge regard for Lord Hope as an individual, I think it's too legalistic and won't do us any favours in the eyes of the public.
You mentioned before, you said, that the House of Lords is there for scrutiny. It is a revising chamber, but it's not there to thwart the will of the elected chamber. But it was Michael Tomlinson, the illegal migration minister, who said yesterday, what they're doing now, this is wrecking amendments. This is designed purely to wreck the Rwanda bill, to thwart the elected will of the Commons.
Well, we'll see, Carol, but I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think the Afghan interpreter thing is a wrecking amendment. So I'll state that. I think Des Brown is a very thoughtful Labour politician, admittedly, but he's very thoughtful. He was a defence minister, a Secretary of State, even, if I remember rightly. And people are sympathetic towards it, and I don't think it's a wrecking amendment. I think Lord Hope's amendment could be considered that, and I will carry on voting against it, and I rather hope that he withdraws it.
The Lords are saying it won't work, but it seems to me that they're terrified it might work. Why don't they why don't they pass it and see if it works, and then if it doesn't, attack the Tories?
Yeah, well, this has always been my comment in our committee, etc., is having been to Rwanda in the last 18 months twice, I know what the place is like. In some ways, it isn't really a deterrent, if I'm honest. It's
because it's very nice.
It's gorgeous.
It's a good place to go, and loads of British tourists go there. Yeah. So, you have to understand Rwanda and recognise that it is not some really third world terrible state. It is a very clean and very well-ordered state. Maybe some people would say too ordered. I think the amazing thing is for 2 or 3 hours every Saturday, every citizen has to go out and clean the common parts. Yeah. So it's a very ordered state. Carol, you're wincing at that, I can see. But it is understanding the country, and I think lawyers do tend to look at the legals a bit too much, and perhaps they should drop this amendment when it comes back, because, as you say, it's getting a bit of a pain now.
All right.
And I rather hope the government concedes on Afghan. So there we are.
All right, Lord Marland, always good to talk to you. We have to go because we're tight on time. So the Rwanda bill will be back in the Commons next week when they'll try and overturn these 2 amendments. But there is a point about Afghan interpreters should not be
No, he's absolutely right, but he's...
We've got to go to the break. This is Britain's Newsroom on GBNews. I'm Andrew Pearce. We're here with Carol Malone. Aidan McGivern's got your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A chilly start in many places today, cloudier in the north with some outbreaks of rain moving in this morning, especially for northern and western Scotland, but a few light outbreaks of rain reaching Northern Ireland later in the morning, and then this area pushes into northern England and eventually North Wales by the middle of the afternoon. Turning cloudier in many places then, but staying sunny in the East Midlands, East Anglia, southern England as well, where it will feel pleasantly warm. 15, perhaps 16 Celsius. Not feeling pleasantly warm in the northwest with the wind and the rain. And that rain tends to topple its way southwards during the evening, but it also tends to fizzle away. So not a great deal of rain reaching the south or parts of Wales even. And it will be followed by showers, blustery showers, as the wind picks up overnight. With the breeze overnight, temperatures will stay up in the mid to high single figures, so generally frost-free. But it's going to be a blustery start to Friday. Areas of cloud moving south, some light showers for many places. The most frequent showers will be affecting the far north of Scotland. The wind will be feeling cold, with that wind strongest along the North Sea coast. And there'll be some big waves along the North Sea coast as well. Showers by the afternoon confined to the east of England. Elsewhere, brighter spells emerging, some sunshine and highs of 14 or 15 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M8 in Edinburgh, the outside lanes closed westbound after an accident between junctions 2 and 3 from the M9 to Livingston. It's taking around half an hour in queues from junction 1A for the M90. The M65 in Lancashire is partly blocked eastbound by an accident between junctions 2 and 3 towards Blackburn, causing queues. On the M56 in Cheshire, the inside lanes closed eastbound for repairs between junctions 14 and 12 towards Runcorn, causing long delays. On the A48M in Cardiff, the outside lanes closed southbound for barrier repairs at St Mellons, causing delays. On the M25 in Surrey, the inside lanes closed clockwise with an accident between junctions 11 and 12 from Chertsey to the M3 with queues towards and past there. On the M2 in Kent, there's a lane closed westbound. Someone's broken down between junctions 6 and 5 from Faversham to Sittingbourne. It's taking around 20 minutes in the queues, and there are delays up to an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest prize so far. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 18th of April. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Carol Malone in for Bev Turner.
Another Rwanda setback. Of course, the House of Lords has delayed the passing of the government's Rwanda bill until at least next week. Will it ever end, this political ping-pong? Goodbye to Britain. Hooray! Shouldn't say that. Prince Harry's declared the United States to be his new country of residence. What will his family think? Relief, I should think, Carol.
Well, this document from Companies House officially shows Prince Harry's residence is in the US rather than in the UK. So what does this mean for the relationship with the royal family? And is this yet another sign he's left the UK for good?
Scottish primary schools are appointing children as LGBT champions and are being encouraged to ask pupils as young as 4 if they are gay, lesbian or trans. It's absurd.
I think it's wicked, actually. And we're going to be joined by the transgender marathon runner who's competed as, get this, a man, a woman and a non-binary competitor. She'll be at the London Marathon this weekend too.
And can a leopard change its spots? Teenage TikTok prankster Mizzy issued a public apology to those who were affected by his online pranks last night. Speaking to Patrick Christie's, take a listen.
I apologise to all the victims in the past that I've may have caused distress to, may have harassed, may have mentally tormented in any type of way.
I've got a confession to make. I'm now doing TikTok.
Oh, you're not. You're so not. He can barely send a text.
I have to have help with it, but I've done about 5 TikTok messages.
Stop it.
It's the modern world.
You will ruin your career. Don't
I
do it.
still only have 5 apps on my phone.
Yes, good lad. OK, we'd love to hear what you think. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/YRC. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning. The top stories this hour. MP Mark Menzies has denied claims he misused thousands of pounds of campaign funds. He's given up the Conservative whip for now and will sit as an independent in the House of Commons while the allegations are being investigated. According to The Times, £14,000 was transferred to Mr Menzies' personal bank accounts and spent on private medical expenses. In December, the MP is also said to have called his former campaign manager, claiming he was locked in a flat and needed £5,000 because bad people, he said, were demanding a ransom for his release. The government has promised to do whatever it needs to do to get flights off the ground after peers dealt another blow to the flagship Rwanda plan. The House of Lords ignored ministerial calls to back down and again last night insisted on further revisions to the bill. However, Grant Shapps told GB News this morning the Rwanda plan is the deterrent the UK needs to stop the illegal migrants crossing into Britain.
Let's pass this Rwanda bill. Let's stop messing around, as Keir Starmer was telling his Lords to do last night, by chucking this out again, so the Commons is going to have to come back and vote on it. We've already voted for it numerous times, and let's actually break this illegal chain of people being brought here.
It's been revealed that UK aid funding has been invested in an overseas firm that backs a social media site offering sexual services and promoting the Hamas attack on Israel. MPs are demanding answers from Lord Cameron and the Foreign Office following the findings in a report from the Independent Commission for Aid Impact. More than £6 million of funding went to the India Quotient Fund last year. The watchdog is warning the UK faces a major reputational risk because of those findings. Police have infiltrated a phishing website which taught subscribers how to defraud thousands of victims. 480,000 card numbers belonging to as many as 70,000 people were accessed via the website LabPost, with criminals subscribing to the site taught how to access bank details and PIN numbers. Police have made more than 30 arrests around the world, including at Manchester and Luton airports, as well as in Essex and London. Since its creation, the site's received just under £1 million in subscriptions for criminal users.
Within the UK, we've managed to identify 25,000 victims, and taking down an enabling service like this is absolutely what we need to do to tackle fraud. We need to get ahead and to dismantle an enabler such as LabPost.
New data suggests nearly 1 million private renters in England have been handed a no-fault eviction in the 5 years since the government promised to ban them. YouGov research for charity Shelter suggests it's costing £550 million a year in unwanted moves. If other upfront costs such as rent paid in advance and tenancy deposits are factored in, the total rises to £1.2 billion, according to the findings. The Conservatives insist Section 21 notices will be banned for new tenancies by the general election. Dubai is still grappling with the aftermath of a record-breaking storm that's brought much of the desert city to a standstill. Thousands of passengers have had flights cancelled and severe floodings trapped residents in homes while waterlogged roads are cleared. The unprecedented rainfall has sparked speculation about cloud seeding, something the UAE has denied. Weather journalist Nathan Rowell told us more about the technique and if it had a role in the extreme downpours.
Cloud seeding is a type of weather modification that's used to artificially trigger rain in places where they don't get a lot. Rain forms within clouds on tiny, tiny particles called nuclei. That is what a rain droplet is. And these can be salt particles or dust particles. And in places where they don't get a lot of rain, like Dubai, like the United Arab Emirates, they go up in planes and they seed these clouds, usually with silver iodide, to form these particles and to encourage the rain to fall.
The wife of Star Wars actor Warwick Davis has died at the age of 53. Samantha Davis co-founded the dwarfism charity Little People UK, and she featured in the final Harry Potter film alongside her husband. In a statement, Warwick describes his late wife as his most trusted confidant and an ardent supporter of everything he did. And Nellie the elephant said goodbye to the circus and decided to take a stroll. Residents in Butte, Montana in the United States had an unexpected visitor as Viola, an adventurous elephant, escaped a travelling circus. Caught on camera, Viola wandered through the streets before being gently guided away. Despite the drama, sparking both amusement and concern among locals, she returned home unharmed. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Carol.
Well, hello and welcome back to Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Andrew Pearson, Carol Malone.
Yeah, joining us now is Barrister Sam Fowles to get a legal perspective on the Rwanda situation, because the last night the Lords killed it for the fourth time. Welcome, Sam. Hi.
Hi there.
Why are you not here? You should be here with us.
I'm so sorry. I've got to go and be a barrister and do my job occasionally. I wish I was there with you.
Now, listen, what do you think about what happened last night?
I think there's two very sensible amendments. The two amendments the Lords made was, number one, there's got to be an independent check on whether Rwanda is actually safe, which seems entirely sensible. Ministers the courts have examined it in great detail and found that there was real risk that people would be sent back to places where they were in danger. Ministers have just asked us to pretend that didn't happen. And so what the Lords said is no, we want an independent check to make sure this is real. And second, to exempt people who have assisted the UK armed forces from the Rwanda scheme, which again, I think is absolutely right. I think if people have been put in danger because they've been assisting British forces, then it's absolutely right that we should do our part and protect them.
Sam, I don't know whether you heard Lord Marland, who was on the show earlier. He has been to Rwanda. He cannot understand these claims that it's a dangerous place. He said it's a fabulous place. He said, and it's hardly a deterrent. He said it's so lovely. Why is everybody pretending it's this dangerous hellhole? It might have been 30 years ago. It's not now.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's the ministers said the same thing about communist Russia, didn't they? When ministers were sent over to communist Russia, and they gave them a wonderful time, and they came back saying, "Well, communist Russia is brilliant, isn't it?"
Come on, Sam, you can do better than that.
Yes, that's not.
You can do better than that. You can do better than that.
But let's talk about the reality of Rwanda. Before this plan was put in place, the UK government was saying that Rwanda was not a safe place, that it practiced torture, and the opposition members of the opposition were in danger from political attacks. The government changed its mind when the ministers put this plan forward. In addition, it was only a few years ago that refugees in camps in Rwanda who were protesting against their treatment route were met with gunfire from Rwandan security forces and simply shot. So Rwanda has a history of, and a very recent history of murderous treatment towards refugees and opposition leaders.
Sam, you know that this year, the United Nations, no less, that great bastion of liberal philosophy, has sent around 1,800 refugees from Libya to live in Rwanda. If it's good enough for the United Nations, a body I know that you think is rather good, body I'm not so keen on, if it's good enough for the United Nations, why isn't it good enough for us to send illegal migrants to Rwanda to have their applications processed?
Because the United Nations is not leaving these people at the mercy of the Rwandan government. The United Nations has sent people to UN-run refugee camps and UN-protected refugee camps. Now, if that's what we were talking about, if we were talking about sending people to live in the custody of a UN facility, then that's one thing. But we're not. We are doing something entirely different, which is leaving them with the Rwandan government, which is the same government that has a history.
Yeah, 30 years ago, Sam.
Yes.
30 years ago.
Not now.
Not now.
Not 30 years ago. Not 30 years ago at all. We're talking about the current government, which has shot protesters. We're talking about the current government, which has wrongfully imprisoned
people watching will be thinking, you know, you're being naive here. This is a cynical ploy by the Lords, by many on the left, to stop this, just for no other reason that they want to thwart the Tories. It feels to me like they're terrified it might work. Why don't they give it a go? Why don't they pass it and let's see if it works?
Well, the idea that if you are facing rape, starvation, murder, you're going to get deterred by the, I think, 0.4% chance that you might get
facing rape and murder? A lot of these people are economic migrants, and you know it. We see pictures of them every single day getting off their boats. They're men between 18 and 34. They're economic migrants. They're not people fleeing war, rape and torture.
Well, that's not actually the British government's view. The British government gives asylum seeker status to the majority of people that get off small boats. So I can only go on what the government said, and they said the majority of these people are genuine refugees. But so the idea that genuine refugees are going to be deterred by the 0.4% chance that they might be sent to Rwanda is for the birds. And in pursuing this this kind of flight of fancy, this really performative exercise, what we're doing is fundamentally undermining the rule of law, which says that if a court decides and makes a decision of fact, then that decision of fact stands. The government is asking courts to pretend that this decision of fact they've made has never happened, and sort of conduct business in this totally imaginary world.
Sam, can I just ask you if you've seen the latest figures on the racial background, the identity of the refugees crossing the Channel illegally, I might add? The fastest rising group now are people from Vietnam. Can you remind me what war is raging in Vietnam, which is driving so many of them into Britain, apart from the fact they think we're a soft touch?
Well, there is, of course, not a war going on in Vietnam at the moment, but that doesn't mean it's a...
So why do you think so many are coming here? Are there, what rape, strife and persecution are they fleeing from Vietnam? Because I think it's the same question we can apply to many of those refugees who are crossing the Channel. They are coming here, as Carol Malone said, because they're economic migrants. And we have talked on this programme to a human rights lawyer, a leading human rights lawyer called David Hay, who says only 20% of the asylum cases he deals with, in his view, are genuine. Yeah. Only 20%. He said it on the record on this programme more than once. He won't be alone.
Well, that's not what the government itself
Well, hang on,
is
that's
saying.
what he said, and he's at the cutting edge. He's not sitting in your posh chambers in Chancery Lane, Sam. He is dealing with refugees all the time. He said only 20% of the cases are genuine.
And remember, Pearce's paper did an expose on some of these lawyers that are actually dealing with the refugees. They're coaching them. They're coaching them to lie. They're coaching them to say exactly what you just said: rape, torture, murder, that they're victims of.
Well, those lawyers were quite right, and I was, don't get me wrong about this, I was incensed. And
you don't think they're the only ones, though, do you? There will be more.
They should be out of the profession. But again, all I can say is what you're doing here is sort of pulling up individuals, right? And so you can pull up some individual examples of migrants that were not legit. I can give you individuals examples.
80%, you said. 80%, Sam.
80%. Isn't it morally wrong to block attempts to stop this trade in human trafficking? And that's what the Lords are doing, and that's what the human rights lawyers in your profession are doing. They are.
They're not attempting to block that. So the
9 people have died so far this year, and it's only April. 12 died in the whole of last year. Only nine so far this year.
Yeah, it's the Rwanda plan. It's like trying to stop murder by punishing murder victims. It's not punishing human traffickers. It's punishing the victims of human trafficking. So and I'm 100% on board. Let's address human trafficking. Let's address it by targeting human traffickers, not the victims. Let's address it by creating safe and legal routes for genuine asylum seekers. Let's address it by focusing all the resources, 1.8 million per person.
Yeah, but Sam, what about the elephant?
Those resources are actual things that are tackling the actual, not stunts.
Sam, what about the elephant in the room, that they're leaving France, a safe country, which is part of the European Union, which you're a huge supporter of? Some of them have come via Germany, another safe part of the European Union. They're safe countries. Why are they coming here? They're coming here because we are a soft touch. We don't turn them around. We don't turn the boats around. And I would argue it's very little to do with fleeing persecution, strife, murder, rape, as we've seen from the vast increase in the number coming from Vietnam. It's because they know when they get here, the border system is in such chaos, they're here for good.
Well, actually, the UK takes far less than its expected quota of asylum.
Who set that quota?
We're taking, so the
presumably you're
majority of
talking
asylum
about the EU quota, which we're not part of anymore.
No, I'm not. No, not at all.
Which quota?
Which quota? UN number tier. So the UN looks at what different countries can stand to take, and actually the vast majority of asylum seekers go to countries that can least afford to take them. So these are most.
So you think we should have more here?
So
Sam, you think we should have more here?
Yes, I think we should be doing more to do our bit because.
Have you seen how many?
But he's lifting straight from the book of Keir Starmer, who says we're not doing enough. But this is a crazy. Do you know? Just last weekend alone, Sam, 750 people arrived on Saturday and Sunday. That's one weekend. That's replicating itself every day. Where do you think we're going to get the money to pay and house and take care of these people? The bill currently is nearly £6 billion to rehouse and resettle the people who are coming here. This is unsustainable.
Well, I mean, I tell you where we can get the money. We can cancel the Rwanda plan and stop spending 1.8 million per person. That'll be a good start. The rest of what we can do is to provide, integrate people in the economy, get them working, get them earning money, get them paying taxes, get them contributing to the country.
But what if they've got no right to be here? But what if they've got no right to be here?
Well, they've got a right. And this is what
they're
we're talking
illegal,
about.
if they've lied, they threw away their migration papers and their passports, why should we allow them to stay here?
Well, we shouldn't be allowing people to claim for asylum if they're not genuine asylum seekers. I completely agree with you on that. But again, most people in small boats, according to the government, are genuine asylum seekers. So I'm on board with that. If someone is saying I'm here to work, fantastic. If someone is saying I'm here because I'm fleeing persecution and I want to work, also fantastic.
Right.
If we can get right at the moment, what we do is we don't allow people who are claiming asylum to work at all. So we force them to be to live off the taxpayer.
All right, Sam, press your time. I'm going to have to let you go. Sam, press your time. I'm going to have to let you go. Always good to talk to you. That's the barrister. We like Sam. We have lots of disagreements with him. Sam Fowles, who's also a very fine columnist. A little later in the programme, we're joined by the transgender marathon runner who's competed as a man, a woman, and a non-binary runner. Running in the London Marathon this weekend. I wonder what category. they'll be in. This is Britain's Newsroom at GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In every corner of the world, people celebrate English tradition and values as members of the Royal Society of St George. Yet here in England, branches are closing as membership dwindles.
I feel that in this country, St George is all but dead and buried.
Until recently, Stephen Warden from Wigston was president of the Leicestershire branch. Despite spending £1,500 of his own money advertising, he couldn't find enough members to keep it running.
I did everything humanly possible to get new members into the branch from the local environment, but they were just not interested in joining.
He thinks changing demographics and declining interest in the society's values contributed to disappearing membership. But he also blames political leadership at national and local levels. Stephen claims his proposal for a St George's Day parade was repeatedly rejected by Leicester City Council over 10 years. A celebration is planned for St George's Day, but like most cities and towns, no parade will pass through the streets. A Leicester City Council spokesperson said, Leicester's annual celebrations of St George's Day have been organised and funded by the City Council for many decades, and they remain an important part of the city's festival calendar. Some in Leicester say they would like to see more done to celebrate England's patron saint.
I think it's a sign of patriotism. I think it helps the country. We celebrate a lot of religious festivals here.
People forget, I think, what is important to England.
Maybe it's been sort of jumped onto with the wrong crowd, but I think nowadays it's just completely different.
Back in Wigston, St George's Cross flies above Stephen's home.
It makes me feel good because I know at least I've not forgotten St George if everybody else has.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Gloria De Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
10:23 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Carol Malone, who's standing in for Bev Turner. We've got the panel with us, but we introduced them. Sam Lister, of course, Political Express. And when you're not consulting on breakfast, Nikki...
She has to do breakfast. You know, we're all freelancers.
I know, lovely
We've got
Nikki
livings
Hodgson.
to make.
But first,
I'd be here every day if I could be, Andrew.
Very good, which we'd like.
So she said, yes.
Would you read a couple? We've got some views pouring in.
There's some stuff out here we've got forward, they're not pouring in.
No, they are pouring in.
OK, Jeff says the role and composition of the Lords needs revising away from a legislative to an advisory role.
Well, that's what it's supposed to be.
Well, yeah, no, go on, you.
And then Liz says the House Lords needs to be disbanded. It's a waste of public money.
Well, that we all agree with.
Sam, you and I spend much time in the House of Lords. They are pushing their luck, aren't they?
I think they really, really are pushing their luck. I mean, you've seen our front page today.
Yeah.
We are really not very happy
What
about
is
the latest development.
Lords defy will of the people over
you
Rwanda
wrote
Bill
all
again.
that stuff today?
Yeah.
It was my colleague Michael Nelson.
Yeah.
He's our Home Affairs expert, but obviously he's been following this really closely. This is the fourth time they've done
I
this.
do think, though, Lord Marler made the point that one of the amendments they made was that Afghan interpreters who risked life and limb for this country should not be... They should automatically have a right to come
I think
here.
that there is I think people do actually sympathise with that.
But I thought that was already the case.
I think the government's got a slight concern that it could set a precedent that then isn't just used for people who served in Afghanistan.
OK.
And also, let's not forget, people do just ditch their papers.
Of course they do.
We have a lot of people who say they served in Afghanistan. So I think there's complications around that. I think on the face of it, it seems very straightforward, but I think in reality there are reasons why the government is reluctant to...
Because otherwise, I couldn't understand what... I'm glad to hear that, because I thought this is just an easy win for the government. Just say yes, you have to go into it. Now, Nick, you want to talk to us about a TikToker, and I've made an amazing confession. I now do TikTok.
Yes, he has.
Do you now?
I didn't know.
I'll have to follow you then.
I have done 5 TikTok messages.
Wow. I only put my dog on.
Well, what I've done is I've talked into a telephone, made my message, and somebody under the age of 30 has done the rest.
Yes, exactly.
Because I don't understand it.
Do you know, everybody needs an assistant at this point almost. I can't use TikTok either, don't worry.
Good. And you're young.
And well, not really.
And sassy.
The good thing is that Nikki at least knows who Mizzy is. I knew who Mizzy was.
I don't know who Mizzy is.
No, I mean, I know about him for all the wrong reasons.
So tell us all, what's he been up to?
He's this social media prankster, is probably the polite way of putting it, who goes around terrorising people in and out of their own homes, appearing in people's houses, pinching their dog, which me and Carol just can't...
Do you know what? If he tried to take my Murphy, I would have knocked him right out.
I probably would have done. I would have done as well.
But he picked on people who weren't going to fight back.
No, exactly. And it wasn't, you know, it's not pre-planned and kind of scripted. These are people that genuinely are not expecting him to do what he did. He targeted old people, vulnerable people, people that are not expecting
to do that. How is he making money out of it?
Because you know what you were rewarded for on the internet. You're rewarded for outrage. You're rewarded for absolutely appalling things.
He'd feed the film onto TikTok, and then people watch it. And then
do we want to see his apology? I think we've got his
Patrick Christie's last
bit
night.
of a pathetic apology, but anyway.
I apologise to all the victims in the past that I've may have caused distress to, may have harassed, may have mentally tormented in any type of way. I apologise to them because I didn't mean to do that, and I was just having fun at the moment, but I didn't realise that it would have negative repercussions and negative effects on their psychological way of thinking. So I apologise for that.
Boy is clearly a bit of an idiot. You can't.
He didn't realise what he was doing. Why didn't he realise what he was doing?
When you nick somebody's dog.
I think if you took away the camera and this boy was behaving in this way, you'd have just locked him up. I just don't understand why filming it makes it a kind of acceptable thing to do.
I know. And taking someone's dog and picking an old lady.
This is just the problem with social media. You know, social media is directly rewarding antisocial behaviours in many ways, you know.
Did he ever get arrested?
Crimes.
Do we know that? Did he get arrested?
I think he was arrested but let off. He's never been charged.
So no charge with anything?
No, not to my
knowledge. So if you do it on social media, you can nick somebody's dog, you can terrify them.
Here's an image of him now going up to a nice lady of more older years even than Carol Malone.
Yeah, there's not many.
In a park.
Not many.
And walking off with her dog.
That upsets me so much.
And he's smiling and laughing, and he thinks that's funny. What
it's absolutely horrendous.
And he also
a pleasant little man.
And he's also saying, if I caused any distress, he must have heard that lady. She must be behind him screaming, because I would have rugby tackled the guy. What's he doing now? What's that? This is outside of prison.
We've seen it. Yeah. Well, I think we've seen enough now. Okay, so
was he in that?
He was.
Maybe he was.
So he's apologised. So
that's all right.
Let's move on.
Let's move on, yeah. Right. What about, should we do the Daily Mail?
Yeah.
So the Daily Mail's got this huge poll today. Lord Ashcroft, obviously a Conservative peer, and it's worrying for the government. It finds that... I have to put my glasses on here.
They're behind on everything.
It finds that it's behind on everything, yeah. Let's cut to the chase, Andrew. But importantly... 45% of voters still don't want Starmer.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, bizarre. That's the interesting thing here. So that is the glimmer of hope in this for Rishi Sunak.
He's not sealed the deal, to use that awful cliché political expression, Starmer.
Yeah.
He's boring, they don't know what he stands for. Yeah. And if you look at a lot of focus groups, because you see the data, people say he keeps changing his mind, doesn't he?
I mean, he's changed his mind on all sorts. We've seen this on whether a woman is a woman, on Brexit, on Jeremy Corbyn, whether he's fit to be Prime Minister or not. We've seen him
£28 billion a year on green spending.
Yeah, that's all, you know, up the swan.
You know, Piers and I were saying before, if we had a half-decent Tory leader, Labour will really not stand a chance. So, Sam, could they elect another leader before an election, do you think?
Honestly, Carol, I mean, the chatter continues all the time in Westminster about this.
That's all they talk about.
About, you know, will there be a new leader before the election? Will the election be now in July? It is ludicrous. I mean, going down that road is insanity.
I agree.
And I just think, you know, they've just got to come together now and just kind of buckle down
He's
and get
the leader,
on with
and that's it. Nikki, what do you think? I think the most interesting about the poll, actually, is the fact Starmer isn't wanted by 45% of the... That's nearly half the country.
Yeah,
and this is a massive poll.
Well, he completely lacks charisma. I agree about the flip-flopping on things is very difficult for people to get behind. I don't think he actually represents Labour. You know, we know there's a huge problem with people in the party that don't support him already. If he gets in, I give it 2 to 3 months before there's some rebellion, serious rebellion and a challenge to his leadership. And he doesn't reward the right people. You know, he's got people like Ed Miliband, who was going to lead that green policy. He took it away from him. I was sat next to Ed Miliband on the day that happened on the train, and he was just, you know, you could see he was completely stressed and so frustrated.
If he had any character, he'd have resigned because his entire green strategy was junked.
Well, I mean, you might think it was junk. I think people...
No, I said it was junked.
Oh, sorry, junked.
They got rid of it.
Pardon. Yes, it was, and that was just... I mean, I don't understand why they got rid of it. That was the only original policy in the manifesto. Everything else is just kind
Nikki,
of...
they got rid of it because it didn't add up. The sums didn't add up, and that was the problem. They knew that. And Starmer's about to make another announcement today on the green issue again. He's going to commit more money. Well,
he's lost anybody. Anybody that wants to vote Green, he's lost that vote now. He's lost that vote. Nobody's going to vote for him on that basis.
But it is astonishing when, you know, the public don't like him, and yet they say they think Labour would be better on defence.
What I and crunching to Lord Ashcroft's numbers, Labour are more trusted to deal with taking Brexit forward. And yet Keir Starmer was the Labour spokesman, the shadow Brexit secretary under Jeremy Corbyn, who put forward a plan not once but twice for a second referendum to spike and scupper Brexit, and yet he's ahead.
It's astonishing. And Rishi Sunak, let's not forget, he's a true Brexiteer.
Yeah, he
was an original Brexiteer.
I know.
People don't associate that with Rishi Sunak. And so it's bizarre that Keir Starmer is more trusted on Brexit. I think ultimately, look, Keir Starmer has not sealed the deal. There is a glimmer of hope there for the Conservatives. I don't think realistically they think that, you know, that they can kind of hang on in power. What they do see is the possibility of not being completely wiped out.
Well, what they've got, if I was advising the Prime Minister, stop banging on about an unworkable smoking ban.
Ridiculous. Or artificial intelligence.
No blame and all that, but talk about bread and butter issues like how to get people can afford to pay their mortgage, work,
good
bread
jobs,
and butter issues, and have proper defence.
And get the flights off to Rwanda. He's got to do that.
He has to do that, and that's why I don't think there will be a July election, because he won't be able to do it in time, in my opinion. I think he's going to push it. I do think there's a good chance he's going to push it as far back as possible, because they can't possibly win anyway. So the only thing that can happen is that he manages to get 1 or 2 of these things off the ground, or something terrible happens and it goes.
We're pressed on time. We're going to bring you back. That's Sam and Nikki. They're going to be back a little later. We'll give them a bit longer too. So we're going to go to the headlines now with Tatiana.
Andrew, thank you very much. The top stories this morning. MP Mark Menzies has denied claims he misused thousands of pounds of campaign funds. He's given up the Conservative whip for now and will sit as an independent in the House of Commons while the allegations are investigated. According to The Times, £14,000 was transferred to Mr Menzies' personal bank accounts and spent on private medical expenses. In December, the MP is also said to have called his former campaign manager, claiming he was locked in a flat and needed £5,000 because he said bad people were demanding a ransom for his release. The government has promised to do whatever it needs to do to get flights off the ground after peers dealt another blow to the flagship Rwanda plan. The House of Lords ignored ministerial calls to back down and again last night insisted on further revisions to the bill. However, the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps insists the Rwanda plan is the deterrent the UK needs to stop migrants illegally crossing into Britain. It's been revealed that UK aid funding has been invested in an overseas firm that backs a social media site offering sexual services and promoting the Hamas attack on Israel. More than £6 million of funding went to the India Quotient Fund in 2023, according to a report from the Independent Commission for Aid Impact. MPs are now demanding answers from Lord Cameron and the Foreign Office following the findings. The Deputy Prime Minister is warning Britain is facing heightened economic security risks because of globalisation. Oliver Dowden's due to speak at Chatham House later, where he'll outline plans to protect against shocks like energy price spikes following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Dowden's expected to call for a review of export controls and an update of the Investment Act used to block deals with Chinese companies. Prince Harry has officially listed the United States as his primary residence. According to documents filed in the UK, the change was made last summer. He and his wife Meghan moved to America after stepping back from royal duties in 2020. And the cheapest European holiday destinations this summer might not be where you'd expect. Consumer group Which has analysed more than 4,500 package deals and found the least expensive are locations generally considered pricey, like the Greek islands or Italy's Amalfi Coast. Traditionally low-cost options like Bulgaria and Turkey didn't even make the top 10. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2474 and €1.1679. The price of gold is £1,908 and 32 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,878 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A38M on the Aston Expressway heading north out of Birmingham, there's a lane closed where a car's broken down between Dartmouth Circus and Park Circus, causing delays. On the A48M in Cardiff, the outside lane's closed southbound at St Mellons for emergency barrier repairs after an accident yesterday, causing delays. In Somerset, the A361 is closed each way between Dean and Leighton after an accident yesterday evening. Train services between Andover and Salisbury are diverting via Southampton because of a gas leak near the railway. On the M23 in Surrey, there's a lane closed southbound where a lorry's broken down between junctions 8 and 9 from the M25 to Gatwick Airport. It's slow towards and past there, and there are delays of up to an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk. That's after a passenger was taken ill earlier on. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Children's stories like Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland now come with a trigger warning at universities, alerting readers to possible themes of white supremacy.
Yes, these warnings are being applied to colonial narratives, that's the claim, commonly found in adventure stories and famous novels from the Victorian era. Well, joining us now is the actor Charlie Lawson. And Charlie, these warnings have been applied to Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland. What's this university getting at?
Well, look, first of all, this is nothing new. We hadn't heard about it for a while. Universities have been doing this over the last couple of years. I remember having a chat with one of your colleagues. But when Gabriella, the lovely Gabby, phoned me up today, I had to beg her to put me on after 9 o'clock because I found myself getting rather irate about the whole thing. But I will do my best to be very polite.
Yes, keep it clean.
Yes, look, which is quite difficult for me, as you'll appreciate, over this subject. Look, this is universities just jumping on the same trying to be relevant bandwagon. Is it any wonder that we look at the quality of graduates from university, and in my humble opinion, some of them are slightly disappointing. But I did phone a couple of people I knew who had sons and daughters at various leading universities, and they had been speaking this morning. And thank the Lord, they think it's a complete load of bloody nonsense, as I do. Give the C.S. Lewis Centre a ring in East Belfast, because that's where your man came from. And I think you'll find you'll get short shrift, because we're not all about that in East Belfast. We don't censor anything.
Andrew Beers, Carol Malone here in for Bev Turner. We want to hear from you. Send your views and post your comments. You do that by visiting gbnews.com/your say. What are they talking about,
We've got some of the views now. Rod says, I'm fed up with these unelected members in the House of Lords rejecting Rwanda. Dave says, typical response from the out-of-touch Lords. It's time they shut up and let the people's will proceed.
And not surprisingly, a lot of people are very upset about what's happening in Scotland. Just to remind you, if you're just tuning in, children as young as 4 to be asked if they're gay, straight or transgender. Yes, I don't get it either. I think actually it's wicked. Adele says there's absolutely no need for any mention of gender things in schools. Children should just be children and learn to read and write. Janet and John.
Yeah. Do we need any more? No. Justin says, let kids be kids. That's true. What the hell's going on? If my kids were to ask at the age of 4, are you trans, gay or lesbian, they wouldn't understand the question.
Well, I should say they wouldn't even know.
Yeah, wouldn't know the question, yeah.
Cameron Walker, our very fine royal correspondent in the studio with us. Prince Harry, what's he done?
Well, he is officially a resident of the United States.
Hurrah!
Rather than the United Kingdom.
Hooray!
So this
is his wife as well?
Well, yeah,
Sure
quite,
he is.
yeah. So this Companies House document officially shows that he has changed his residency to the United States. It happened last year, but it was only published this week. Why is this important? Well, it shows, it's another sign that he's cut ties with the United Kingdom. He doesn't want anything, perhaps, to do with living in the United Kingdom, and he has his family and his wife and his kids in his £12 million mansion in Montecito, and he's perfectly happy there. This is a document from his company Travelist.
Would this have, by being an American citizen, would that have tax advantages for him, financial advantages? Would that explain why he's done it?
Well, quite possibly. I think what it does show is that there's a big rift still with members of his own family. Clearly, he has just lost his case against the Home Office over police protection. I think protection comes in part of it, because his US protection team, which costs millions of dollars a year, reportedly, can carry firearms.
Yeah.
In the UK, they cannot carry firearms. They also do not have access to the MI5 police intelligence. So he's always said, Harry, that he doesn't feel safe in the UK. Perhaps that's the reason why he is going to stay in the United States.
But can we, just to jump in there, if he came to Britain to go and see his father, who we know is sick, and if he was involved in anything that involved other members of the royal family, he would have this full panoply of royal protection. He would be treated just as any other royal. And he's not... and if he came here on holiday, I can't... Why would he anyway? Because he's made his decision to be in the United States. I just don't buy the fact he's not going to be protected.
So Ravek, the Home Office committee, does Prince Harry's security on a case-by-case basis.
Exactly.
As you said, he came back when King Charles had cancer for a few days. We're expecting him to come back to the UK next month for the Invictus 10th anniversary service. So he does have protection. Clearly, Prince Harry thinks it's inadequate. He also says that clearly he also still loves his family, which is why he made the effort to come back. Will he bring Meghan and the kids? We haven't seen them for a while.
Do you think when he came back, it's time to say his dad, because he only saw Charles for 25 minutes, do you think that it was made clear to him by the family that there was no way back? Because remember, we heard lots of rumours that he had volunteered to do duties while Kate and Charles were out of action. Do you think it's been made clear to him there is no way back in?
Well, I think to any ordinary family, you would think if your father has cancer, you fly across the Atlantic to see your father, you're going to make an effort to see other members of your family as well. That didn't happen. We have to remember the royal family is different to ours. You can't sometimes just ring up your dad, who happens to be the king. It needs to all be scheduled. Perhaps that's why it was only 25 minutes. It's reported that King Charles held the helicopter back so he could see his son for 25 minutes. But Prince William, his brother, there was absolutely no contact between the two when he was here in the United Kingdom. Every time you speak to sources close to William, you mentioned Prince Harry, a barrier goes up. They don't want to talk about Prince Harry. So clearly, I think between his brother and himself, still a big rift.
But wasn't there the impression that he was ready to come back? A little bit, as if part-time, and that was rejected. And remember, there was some... He'd volunteered to do one particular thing, and the palace came straight out and said, that's not happening.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is when King Charles was stepping back from royal duties because of his cancer. There were perhaps rumours that Harry said he would be happy to take on some of King Charles's duties. Yeah. But the fact is, he stood back as a working member in 2020 of the royal family. He decided to move to California, as is his right. He is perfectly entitled to do that. But as the late Queen said during the Sandringham summit, you cannot be half in, half out.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
And she, wise monarch that she was, and that dictum applies today. She, of course, is getting on with her career to make some money. She's got this new person website.
American Riviera Orchard.
Yes. American Riviera Orchard. And the first thing she's done is produce some strawberry jam. But I'm sure it's very nice jam, Cameron. But I thought
not revolutionary, is it?
And I thought she was going to be a pioneering feminist? I'm not taking the mick here. Genuinely, she did say that. She's written that, pioneering feminist. How does making pots of jam, which I associate with the Women's Institute, make her into a pioneering feminist? Is she, like, trying to completely reinvent herself over there?
Well, I think she's got her hands in many pots here. I think clearly her lifestyle blog for Tig, before she met Prince Harry, was a relative success. I suspect she's trying to create something similar here. It's a very small batch of jam. 50 jars were sent out. I'm getting the hint that she actually made it herself.
Oh,
I don't have confirmation of that.
Who says that? I don't believe that.
Where's the photographic evidence?
Exactly.
Where's the photographic
Well, we got that little
evidence?
video, didn't we?
Yeah.
But I'm told it's a very nice jam, something sweet for her friends. It's hinting at perhaps the world she wants to create.
But it's not,
it's not available at the moment on sale.
It's not revolutionary, is it? If you go to any farm shop anywhere in the country, you're going to see a jar of jam exactly like the one she's
And it's rather old-fashioned. It's got the little paper wrapping on the top.
Yes. And that's going to be the challenge, actually. What is the USP, other than it's got Meghan's name on it? I think we'll have to wait to see how successful it is. I think it would be good to do a taste test here on GB at some point.
I'm just not interested in her jam. I just think, who cares about Meghan Markle jam? It's not interesting.
No. But she's interested in making money, though. She's herself a Gwyneth Paltrow,
and the US Patent Office has seen that this particular company has registered the use of cookbooks, jams, and other
she really is turning into a revolutionary feminist. Revolutionary feminism, that.
Yes.
She wants to be a lifestyle influencer. One of the things she wants to do.
Apparently, she said she made the jam for her friends. Has she got 50 friends?
You've cracked that joke before,
I think
Piers.
it's a good
getting
joke.
a little bit tired now. You cracked it to me outside this morning.
Joke.
Enough.
Do we think we're going to see her anytime? Which, I mean, Invictus Games, very important, very successful operation by Harry. It works with servicemen and women who've lost limbs and been very badly damaged by conflict. He was in Afghanistan, of course. Do we think she'll come with him?
Well, sources close to Duke and Duchess of Sussex have not ruled out that Meghan will return to the UK next month. They are not confirming anything on the record whatsoever. I suspect it's very likely that Prince Harry will come back to the Invictus Games at St Paul's Cathedral.
This is the service to mark 10 years.
To mark 10 years, his veterans charity. If Meghan does come back, it would be the first time in a number of years since she has been back, and she could have.
And just briefly, Cameron, would ordinarily you expect a member of the royal family to be at such an important religious service to mark 10 years of Invictus Games?
Yeah, I think you would, and I think it's going to be a very strong message if a member of the royal family does not turn up to that service.
Even if it's a junior royal like the Duke of Gloucester or someone, if there isn't, that's going to say a lot, isn't it?
It will, because the royal family, as you know, very close to the armed forces here in Britain.
No.
All right, that's Cameron Walker. Up next, the Home Office has been forced to move asylum seekers out of an ex-RAF base in Essex after safety concerns were raised at the site. Our reporter is at the scene. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. A chilly start in many places today, cloudier in the north with some outbreaks of rain moving in this morning, especially for northern and western Scotland, but a few light outbreaks of rain reaching Northern Ireland later in the morning, and then this area pushes into northern England and eventually North Wales by the middle of the afternoon. Turning cloudier in many places then, but staying sunny in the East Midlands, East Anglia, southern England as well, where it will feel pleasantly warm. 15, perhaps 16 Celsius. Not feeling pleasantly warm in the northwest with the wind and the rain. And that rain tends to topple its way southwards during the evening, but it also tends to fizzle away, so not a great deal of rain reaching the south or parts of Wales even. And it will be followed by showers, blustery showers, as the wind picks up overnight. With the breeze overnight, temperatures will stay up in the mid to high single figures, so generally frost-free, but it's going to be a blustery start to Friday. Areas of cloud moving south, some light showers for many places. The most frequent showers will be affecting the far north of Scotland. The wind will be feeling cold, with that wind strongest along the North Sea coast, and there'll be some big waves along the North Sea coast as well. Showers by the afternoon confined to the east of England. Elsewhere, brighter spells emerging, some sunshine and highs of 14 or 15 degrees.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive?
Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Now, the Home Office has been forced to move asylum seekers out of an ex-RAF base in Essex after safety concerns were raised about the site.
Well, with plans to stop housing migrants in hotels, which is the government's plan, where can they go now?
We're going over to our reporter, Ray Addison, who's going to tell us. Hi, Ray.
Hello, yes, good morning to you both. Well, of course, 10 months ago, asylum seekers started moving into this former RAF airbase. It was, of course, decided at that time that it was safe and fit for purpose. That was a decision made by the Home Office. And now we're hearing that 70 have been moved out and put back into those expensive hotels, which, of course, is a bit of a PR disaster for the Prime Minister. Now, the fears are that on the site there are several safety risks, including radiation and unexploded ordnance. Now, I'm joined now by Andrew Hull. He's the chairman of Wethersfield Airbase Scrutiny Committee. Thanks for joining me, Andrew. What's your reaction to these these men here being moved out of the site?
Well, it comes as no surprise to us at all. We pre-warned the Home Office over a year ago about concerns regarding contamination on the site. What we do find quite odd is that the Home Office had said that they ensured that the site was safe before anyone came on. So why are they undertaking testing now, whilst there's almost 600 people on site, and staff and volunteers, etc.? I mean, according to our expert report, people are being put at a high risk now. So what was the Home Office deciding back 10, 12 months ago when they decided to ignore our report, ignore all advice, and carry on blindly with what they were trying to implement?
Tell us about this report. So you've commissioned your own expert analysis of this site.
Yeah, so before the Home Office were on site, the Ministry of Justice were interested in building a very large prison complex, and as local people we understand the historic sort of ongoings here at the airbase. And US military sites across the world are notorious for being one of the worst pollutants and contaminants going, basically. So we had very, very strong fears. So we instructed a world-class consultancy led by a man with over 40 years' experience, probably one of the most respected engineers in the country. And it's a 52-page document, and it set out very, very clearly a set of recommendations that need to be implemented before anyone accesses the site, and the very high risk of potential severe consequences of being exposed to Class 1 hazards if these recommendations aren't put in place before occupation of the site.
Just in a nutshell, what was the biggest concern about this site? Because we haven't got much time now.
Yeah, the primary fear from our consultant, our expert, was probably radioactive ash. There was a policy directly after World War II where disposing of surplus military planes, like the radioactive dials and the paint, there was a common policy of bash, bury or burn, and radioactive ash was spread almost anywhere on a site. So it's very hard to understand where anything could be on this site. This is why every part of this site, every 1 acre of the 800 acres needs to be assessed before it's deemed safe. And this simply hasn't been done.
Andrew Hull, thank you very much for your time. Sorry we don't have more time to go into detail. Well, they've just been given a 3-year extension to their planning permission here at the site. It's terrible timing with the news that they've discovered these potential sources of radiation or ordnance, and 70 people have had to be moved out as a result.
All right, that's Ray Addison there in Essex. This is... we've had a statement from the Home Office.
OK, let's the Home Office says, we have always been clear that the use of asylum hotels is unacceptable, which is why we moved asylum seekers to former military sites, which we ensure are safe to accommodate asylum seekers prior to use. Well,
humiliating for the Home Secretary, of course, because it's in his constituency, James Cleverly.
It's a massive own goal, isn't it? It's crazy.
And this will be a huge issue at the general election for him. He was opposed to it even being there before he was Home Secretary, and now he's got lumbered with it.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to this latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's a fine day across the south today, but further north, a lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle as well. It was a chilly old start. Temperatures slowly picking up with a bit of sunshine in the south. Further north, though, sunshine in short supply because a set of weather fronts have been trickling southwards, bringing the cloud and the outbreaks of rain. It won't rain all day, some drier spells, particularly in eastern Scotland, but the damp and drizzly weather is now spreading in across northern England. Much of the south, though, dry and fine, clouding over the Midlands and Wales, but we'll hold on to some hazy sunshine across southern England and East Anglia. And after that cold start, temperatures could creep up to 15, 16 degrees here, but it's a cooler day as the winds pick up further north with the outbreaks of rain. That rain will continue to trickle south, so it'll turn damp over the Midlands, Lincolnshire, East Anglia through this evening. Patchy rain then spreading across the southeast overnight, much of the southwest staying dry. The winds noticed coming down from the north, but actually it'll be a much milder night tonight compared to last night because there'll be much more cloud around, temperatures mostly holding up at 7 or 8 Celsius. So won't be as chilly first thing tomorrow morning. Will be quite a drab start, cloud and rain over Wales and southeast England. That should tend to clear away, but lots of showers will come in over central and eastern parts. A much brighter day for western Scotland tomorrow. Northern Ireland cheering up too, with some good sunny spells developing in many areas through the afternoon. But the wind's still coming down from the north, so still bringing a fairly chilly feel.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for 2. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
11 a.m. on Thursday, the 18th of April. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
And I have no idea, because there it is. Now, cybercrime or bust. The authorities have brought down an illegal online site used by thousands of criminals to defraud victims worldwide. Mark White has more.
Well, this operation marks a very worrying new departure where tech-savvy criminals are teaching other criminals how to set up these fake websites to try to trick unsuspecting victims into handing over their personal details.
And travel carnage continues in Dubai as flag flushing devastates the city. But was it all caused by scientists in Britain?
Now, Scottish primary schools are appointing children as LGBT champions and are being encouraged to ask pupils as young as 4 if they are gay, lesbian or trans. It's absurd.
It's wicked. Goodbye to Britain. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Prince Harry declares the United States is officially now his new country of residence. Farewell,
Bye-bye. We'll be joined by the transgender marathon runner who has competed as a man, a woman and a non-binary runner. She'll be at the London Marathon this weekend too, and she's running to the studio as we speak. We'd love to hear what you think, so post your comments by visiting gbnews.com, your say. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Carol, thank you. The top stories this morning. Questions are being asked about when the Conservative Chief Whip knew about claims an MP allegedly misused thousands of pounds of campaign funds. Reports in The Times suggest concerns were raised about Mark Mackenzie's 3 months ago. According to the newspaper, £14,000 was transferred to Mr Menzies' personal bank accounts and spent on private medical expenses. He denies any wrongdoing, but has agreed to give up the Conservative whip and will sit as an independent in the House of Commons while the allegations are investigated. Commons leader Penny Mordaunt has said MPs will consider further Lords amendments to the Rwanda bill on Monday. The House of Lords ignored ministerial calls to back down and again last night insisted on further revisions to the bill. The government has promised to do whatever it needs to do to get flights off the ground to Rwanda. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps told us this morning the Rwanda plan is the deterrent the UK needs to stop migrants illegally crossing into Britain.
Let's pass this Rwanda bill. Let's stop messing around, as Keir Starmer was telling his Lords to do last night, by chucking this out again. So the Commons is going to have to come back and vote on it. We've already voted for it numerous times. And let's actually break this illegal chain of people being brought here.
Now, support for the Conservative Party has hit a record low with just 19% of public backing, according to an Ipsos poll. The Prime Minister's satisfaction rating has also dropped to an historic low of -59, matching John Major's record. The public also appear divided on a Conservatives' leadership change, with 37% calling for a shift. Sir Keir Starmer maintains his lead in the polls, but he too faces a drop in satisfaction, down from 29% to 25% since February. It's been revealed that UK aid funding has been invested in an overseas firm that backs a social media site offering sexual services and promoting the Hamas attack on Israel. MPs are demanding answers from Lord Cameron and the Foreign Office following the findings in a report from the Independent Commission for Aid Impact. More than £6 million of funding went to the India Quotient Fund last year. The watchdog is warning the UK faces a major reputational risk because of the findings. Arrests have been made across the world after British police took down a website which taught subscribers how to defraud thousands of victims. 480,000 card numbers belonging to as many as 70,000 people were accessed via the website LabPost, with criminals subscribing to the site taught how to access bank details and PIN numbers. Since its creation, the site's received just under £1 million in subscriptions for criminal users. Detective Superintendent Helen Rance from the Metropolitan Police says many more arrests will be made in the coming weeks.
Within the UK, we've managed to identify 25,000 victims, and taking down an enabling service like this is absolutely what we need to do to tackle fraud. We need to get ahead and to dismantle an enabler such as LabHost.
New data suggests nearly 1 million private renters in England have been handed a no-fault eviction in the 5 years since the government promised to ban them. YouGov research for charity Shelter suggests it's costing £550 million a year in unwanted moves. If other upfront costs, such as rent paid in advance and tenancy deposits, are factored in, that total rises to £1.2 billion, according to the findings. The Conservatives insist Section 21 notices will be banned for new tenancies by the general election. Dubai is still grappling with the aftermath of a record-breaking storm that's brought much of the desert city to a standstill. Thousands of passengers have had flights cancelled and severe floodings trapped residents in homes while waterlogged roads are cleared. Some inbound flights at Dubai's international airport have resumed, but on the whole, the airport says it's still barely functional. The unprecedented rainfall has sparked speculation about cloud seeding, something the UAE has denied. And Prince William is to return to official public duties today for the first time since the Princess of Wales revealed her cancer diagnosis. He's set to visit a food distribution charity in Surrey and then travel to West London to meet young people who benefit from the organisation's deliveries. He's spent the past month with his wife and children during the Easter holidays. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Carol.
It's 11:08. Welcome back to Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Carol Malone. So police have busted, so we're telling you about this in the headlines, a global cyber gang.
They've arrested dozens of suspected fraudsters and taken down an illegal website used by thousands of criminals to defraud victims worldwide. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has this report. Sorry, Mark. I know.
Across the UK, dozens of suspected cyber criminals had a rude awakening as law enforcement here and around the globe moved in to smash a multi-million-pound online scam that's defrauded many thousands of victims. Multiple addresses were raided and some suspects were pulled off flights at Manchester and Luton airports.
You have been identified as involved in LabHost, an online phishing platform which allows users to set up fraudulent websites in order to impersonate online services such as banking.
This is now the front page, greeting any would-be cyber criminal trying to access the services of this illegal online site. The website LabHost is part of a hugely worrying development in cybercrime. It aimed to provide an easy step-by-step guide on how to download and use fake sites.
Your page has installed and you're ready to spam. Make sure to check that it works before starting your spam. Stay safe and good spamming.
Unsuspecting members of the public would then believe those sites were pages from legitimate businesses like banks and retailers, all with the aim of phishing, of fooling victims into revealing personal details which would be used to commit fraud.
There are, unfortunately, many enabling services to fraud. However, together with our law enforcement partners, we are tackling them. To take out an enabler means that we are able to take it out at source, and this, we hope, will send out a message to those using similar services that we can get their data and we will be onto them.
Law enforcement have identified at least 70,000 victims of this latest cyber scam in the UK alone. The lab host site made more than £1 million from 2,000 criminals who subscribed to download its services. Those attempting to access the site now are faced with a bit of online trolling from law enforcement.
You've targeted victims all around the world. The police there may not be too happy with you. Think carefully about where you go on holiday next. That was your 2023 Lab Host Wrapped. Lab Host is dead now.
With that illegal site now infiltrated and disrupted by authorities, dozens of those it was training and equipping in the art of cyber fraud are in police custody and likely facing prosecution. Mark White, GB News.
Delighted Mark White's in the studio with us. Mark, sometimes I often say on this program, we never see bobbies on the beat. They're spending too much time looking at computer screens, chasing so-called hate crimes, but a big part of their job now is just this cyber fraud.
It's the way in which criminality has really developed. So the biggest crime out there that pretty much everyone is likely at some point to fall victim to is fraud. And the vast majority of that fraud is now online because our lives are spent online. Your bank accounts and your subscriptions to TV channels or whatever it might be to a retailer, it's all done online. You're putting details in there. And this scam is all about what they call phishing with a PH, not the angling variety. But effectively, they're trying to get information from you, to harvest as much information as possible, either to commit direct fraud against you, steal money from your bank accounts, or to actually get enough details so that they can then apply for things like credit cards or loans or mortgages in your name, which you would then potentially down the line be saddled with this debt. Your credit rating would plummet because suddenly you've got someone who's getting all this money in credit cards and loans, who then obviously defaults on that, and you're left with it because it's in your details.
You know, I got a phone call yesterday from a so-called insurance company asking me lots of questions, and I knew instantly it was a scam because they were talking about my recent accident. Well, you know, incredibly, I haven't had an accident, touch wood. But you know, all of us think we're too smart to be scammed by the scammers, but we're not, because a lot of them are very credible and a lot of them are very clever.
Yes, and interestingly, this particular scam, the majority of people that fall for it are young people, because they're the people that are doing most, you know, living most of their sort of lives online. So although, of course, older people are perhaps more susceptible to being tricked and fooled by people calling them up and the like. They're not necessarily the type of demographic who are online all the time and can fall for these very realistic pages that are emailed out to you that purport to be your bank or your retailer. That there's some kind of issue, security issue, that you've got to contact them urgently and put the details to access this site or whatever, and all the while you're handing over key information that can be used against you.
It's interesting because I got an email last year purporting to be from HMRC, and they said I owed them something like 15 grand, and I thought, oh, and you know, it sends you into a blind panic because it looks very efficient, very clever, and I rang my accountant, I think, or a lawyer, I can't remember, and they said, HMRC will never email you. Not in a million years. They won't email you.
Yeah, but also I had the same one, and also if you looked closely at the small print, there was a full stop or something in the wrong place. But Carol, like some people think, oh my God, everybody's got to pay their tax. If you don't pay your tax bill, you're paying interest instantly. This website's been taken down, Mark, but my worry is another one will take its place within a matter of days.
There are many now popping up, and the thing that is so worrying about this is, I'm not tech savvy at all, but I went to this police briefing and was showing the demonstration of how this works. And even I could work this out. And what it's designed to do, it's designed to get subscriptions from criminals who want to commit fraud but just don't have the technical knowledge to do that. So it's a how-to guide, and also providing you with the sort of various websites that you might need to carry out this particular scam. And already 2,000, just as one site, 2,000 criminals had signed up to this site, paying between 200, 300, 400 pounds for their subscriptions. The site itself had made £1 million just from those criminals subscribing to it for its information. But then the actual fraud that these people are committing is potentially hundreds of millions of pounds. There are 70,000 victims in the UK alone that they have been able to identify so far, and many times that all around the globe.
And will some of these 70,000 have known they'd been conned at that point? I mean, maybe they hadn't checked their bank account or something?
Yeah, well, a lot of people probably don't know, because what happens is you put that information in.
Yeah.
You wait to hear back, you don't hear anything, and you maybe follow that up or you don't. You might be satisfied and think that you've gone through the appropriate steps. But what you've done is you've handed over personal information. Then, unbeknownst to you, some criminal is using Andrew Pearce's details to go off and get a mortgage on a house.
Well, they're not. Can I tell you, they're not, because even he doesn't know his own details off by. He's not clever. But what would, if you were to advise people on how best to protect themselves, what would you say?
Just to be very, very careful with everything that you see and do. You know, check it out as best as you can. If you see an email, for instance, that purports to come from your bank, contact the bank. You'll have the bank's own details, and just try and check that out. Go onto your app. You can then, you know, check to see with your banking app if they've actually sent you out anything direct.
The trouble, the people who are most at risk here will be the elderly.
That's right.
Because they're not going to have the apps. I'm not being patronising, but a lot of them don't have apps, and they don't know how. They're not tech savvy. It's going to be really tough for them. They're the people who get scared.
And that's where it needs really family and friends, neighbours to just help and you know, ask elderly people who may have some of their dealings that they have to do now over the phone or online, if they're happy with that, if they're not.
It's why, you know,
but
Mark,
it's really difficult, and it's getting worse because, as I say, so much of our life now is conducted online.
It's why feel like I'm King Canute. I'm trying to resist this tidal wave that's trying to overwhelm me.
No, you're not. You just can't access it.
I just don't want to do it online. I just don't like it. I don't trust it. And I'm frightened I'll make a mistake.
Well, we do. I mean, I've seen your text. Your fingers are always going, but that's the same with a lot of us. Anyway, thank you, Mark
Very
White.
interesting. Mark White, as ever.
OK, still to come. Medicine shortages are a new normal across Britain now, putting lives at risk. But is Brexit to blame? We'll be discussing that next. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about Sebastian? It really amazes me how a mother who can lose a child in such a shocking and unexpected way, so little, so precious, can then turn that grief into something so positive. How did you find the strength to get up, get a camera crew, as you say, travel to the other side of the world and investigate all of this?
I was angry at Sebastian for dying. You know, you feel like saying, God, 32 years later and I can still get very, very upset about it. I was angry that something that while he was born and lived with me and slept and then died, they were actively campaigning in New Zealand to try and stop this happening because they had a very high cot death rate there. They had the lady, the Anne Diamond, if you like, of New Zealand, a television presenter called Judy Bailey, went on telly every night and said, if you're just about to put your baby down to sleep, put him on his or her back, not the tummy, and this will help. And their cot death rate plummeted. And I went out to New Zealand and met her, and it was anger that drove me to come back and demand that we have the same advert here, the same campaign. And of course, I got all this complete nonsense from the Department of Health saying, you know, oh, young mothers do not watch television, I was told. In other words, while New Zealand mums were being told how to save their babies' lives. We actively denied British mums that advice during the time that Sebastian and others were dying.
And the other point, I suppose, to make is it's helpful to educate all generations, because when I had my babies, my mum would say, he's not settling, just stick him on his tummy, he'll be much happier, that's what we did with you. And we had to say, well, things have changed, and, you know, but it's about educating everybody, because it's not just the mums that get their hands on the babies.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, we've got our panel again. We're joined by political... I can't say the word, do you know?
Put your teeth in, Malone.
Political editor of the Daily Express, Sam Lister. And what are you? You're an author and
a commentator.
And that's Nikki Hodgson. Hello, welcome to you both.
What are you, Malone?
I'm not entirely sure.
Confused.
A big mouth, you, I say. Excuse me, if I was to pull you up on all the things you've swallowed today, I would be here all day.
Now, let's get into this amazing story in The Sun.
This is incredible. It's incredibly bad. Failed asylum seeker, yet again, pleads guilty to raping a 15-year-old girl.
But this isn't just any old asylum seeker, is it, Sam? This is one of those who was on the plane, about to be deported, do-gooders, who thought they knew better, stopped it, and the Home Office officials then backed off, let him off the plane, and his reward, his gratitude, he's raped a woman.
And I missed
a girl.
it. A 15-year-old girl.
Forgive me.
Horrific story. But as you say, as the Sun describes it, the do-gooder crew who refused to deport this guy. There's been absolutely terrible consequences as a result of their action. And the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, has actually issued a statement to that effect, saying, look, people might think they're doing the right thing. They've got no idea of the consequences
of course they haven't.
That their actions may be.
Of course they haven't.
It's really astonishing. And actually, also, this criminal, this rapist, he was one of those people who were pictured outside a detention centre holding a placard saying migrants are not criminals. And he became...
this one is.
He became the poster boy for anti-deportation campaigners. And
where's he from?
This is where it's ended. Congo, Democratic Republic of
You know,
Congo.
we're in a situation now, Sam, aren't we, where, you know, we have people who've committed sex offences in their country of origin. They come here and they commit more sex offences, and still we let them stay.
Look at Zeddy, obviously the acid attacker. You know, we were kind of... He should not have been still in this country.
Nikki, what do you think about this? Because, I mean, I don't understand even... I don't give them any... leeway at all, these people who intervened on this plane, because as Sam said, they have no idea what this man had done.
No, they haven't, and it's extremely naive. I mean, the thing that I still don't understand is why do we have people coming in when we know the background of them, or we can find out the background of their other crimes, and we don't deport them? I don't understand why that's so difficult. I don't. And the other thing is, you know, we've got to think about the misogyny that is so rife in some of the countries that some of these people come from. Again, it's just... I'm not saying for a second that we should presume that everybody seeking asylum is a sex offender.
Of course not.
But we need an element of scepticism about why people are fleeing wherever they're fleeing from. Like
we had our lawyer on earlier. We like Sam Poles very much, but saying no, they're genuine. They're fleeing persecution, war. So I said, can you explain then why the largest increase now of asylum seekers crossing the Channel are from Vietnam? He said, can you remind me what war is raging in Vietnam?
Well, but the law
there isn't one.
Yes, but there doesn't need to be a war in your home country for you to be oppressed economically. That's the excuse that Albanians are
that's not an excuse to come here. That's not a reason.
No, but that is a reason for why. That's a reason that people are stating now. You know, you don't have to live in a conflict zone to be able to apply. But it doesn't.
You know, we're going to get to the point where everyone around the world who doesn't like where they live is going to want to come to Britain, and they get into Britain. They don't get into France or Germany anymore, but they get here because we are a soft touch, aren't we?
Oh, I don't know. I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, look, there are lots of people... Actually, do you know what? This is actually quite radical feminist of me to say. What I would stop is I would put a halt on men applying for asylum, and I would just let women and children in for a while. Because actually, that way, you know, the majority of people are mothers trying to raise kids, actually fleeing
but then they'll get their blokes in shortly afterwards.
But at least do it. If you started by putting that funnel on, you'd get rid of a lot of the young single men that we end up taking here.
I think Nikki makes a good point when it's, you know, we see with our own eyes, it is young men who are coming in. This is not what we traditionally think of as refugees.
No, I know.
It's not the kind of World War II, tiny children, mothers fleeing. It is young, strapping six-footer men.
But there was also a story in the papers earlier in the week, Nikki saying about why these are allowed in the first, why we don't deport. There was the asylum seeker who wants to leave the country, who's a criminal, and he can't get the Home Office won't let him out. Did you see that story?
You can't really make it up, can you?
Unbelievable.
You can't make it up. But the one thing I would say about, you know, the idea that a member of cabin crew can stop a deportation is absolutely ridiculous. Because, I mean, I know people that work on the flights that deport criminals back to their prison staff that do it in their spare time. It's kind of like a second job for them. And, you know, they are very afraid, actually, of being on those flights with, a bunch of people that have potentially committed some really terrible crimes. I've got no idea how you could be in a situation where somebody who's nothing to do with immigration could make that decision.
Surely the thing is not to put them on commercial planes.
No, absolutely.
Put them on private charter
But we
planes.
do that with convicted criminals. We do put those people that are due to be deported on separate flights.
Anyway,
they have to rethink it.
We've got to move on because this is your favourite subject, although I don't want to give it to you. But this is a story that says Brexit is blatant. UK drops.
Here we go.
Here she goes. Give her a soapbox.
Well, I mean,
Get on your soapbox,
it's
Nikki.
not only Brexit. I'll say that to start off. It's to do with the war in Ukraine. It's to do with global prices. But actually, very importantly, it is to do with us leaving things like the European Medicines Agency. We can't approve drugs in this country as quick as Europe can. You know, remember that system has been working for a long time. We're new to it. We're just learning, you could say. But the reality is people are out of these absolutely vital medicines. I can't get an EpiPen at the minute, for example, and I have a severe nut allergy. If I eat a walnut, I will die, but I don't have an EpiPen right now, so it's kind of just playing Russian roulette because they're out of stock.
Where do they come from?
I don't know where they come from, actually.
It's important.
I don't know where
because if
they
it's
come
not from Europe, what's the excuse?
Yeah, well, I've been told that just not in stock. Lots of people I know have been struggling with ADHD medication. If you know anything about something like ADHD, if you come off that medication, it can really push you to, you know, the point of insanity, actually. HRT was another one. Yeah. We can't, in this country, be in a situation where people can't get basic medicines. It is really, really, really damning. And the other point is that Europe doesn't want to help us right now. We're behind the US and Europe in terms of the chain of who gets what. I just think, why didn't anybody think about this before we voted for Brexit?
How much do you
think it's Brexit?
Big sigh here. Honestly, the way the Guardian's reported this, it's all down to Brexit. It is not. If you look at the report, it says Brexit has exacerbated this. This is not a Brexit problem. I think it's probably fair to say that Brexit has made it slightly worse. This is a global problem. The United States of America is having problems accessing the medicines it needs. And actually, in the EU, the Netherlands has had severe drug shortages for years. So I don't think it's right to say
is there a worldwide
Brexit.
Why is there a worldwide
I think it is because we have, because of the war in Ukraine, plus the COVID pandemic. Obviously, we saw the global supply chain for everything. Wood, for example. Everything just, you know, you couldn't get hold of anything, could you? Everything just ground to a halt. There's all the problems with the Houthis and the shipping channels. There are a lot of global issues at the moment that are contributing to this.
And what's happening in the Middle East won't help either. Israel, Iran.
I think it's fantastic you've actually just messed up Nicky. Anyway, what
That's the job, isn't it? That's the whole point of it.
We like disagreements.
OK, so now, Sam, this is the Times. It says photo booths installed panic buttons for abused women. Women are getting abused when they go to get a photograph taken on railway stations.
No, this is right. Because that's what I thought, Carl. I was like,
It's not what you think.
But it's actually photo booths in Italy. There's an Italian firm that produces photo booths, which is putting in a pink panic box. You hit the button, you get through to an operator who will help you if you're being abused at home. Nothing. So you're not being abused in the panic. You're not being abused in the box.
Why would you go to a photo booth to do that? Why wouldn't you just go and tell the police?
And actually, this is a really serious point. So if you are a victim of domestic abuse, I know women who have been through this. It is horrendous.
Of course.
men can be very controlling, take access to your phone, check your messages, monitor what you're doing, particularly in this day and age where there's cameras, people have cameras in their homes. Everything you do is being tracked all the time by these controlling abusers. If you're in a train station, for example, you can just pop into that booth, press that button, get through to somebody who will help you, who can actually support you, get you out of that situation.
Hang on.
And it's the privacy and it's the ability to just do it.
But how can a bloke sitting in a control centre somewhere in the middle of nowhere get you out of an abuse situation?
Well, we're not saying it's a bloke necessarily, is it? I mean, it depends.
It's a charity.
It's a charity. It has to be a system that's linked up. I mean, I'm a bit sceptical about this because actually, as a woman, I wouldn't go into if I was abused, I wouldn't go into a photo booth to seek refuge by myself
on
in
a
public.
busy railway station.
And in public, I think this is a bit naive. I mean, I quite like the thing we have here called Ask for Angela. Do you know that in bars?
Yeah.
So if you're on a date that's going wrong, or you think somebody's up to something, or if you had a drink spiked, you can go to the bar staff and say you want to talk to Angela, and they will help you get out of that situation.
Oh, right.
My husband, who used to be a bar owner, had that implemented.
But don't they have to be part of the Ask for Angela scheme?
Yes, you have to volunteer to be part of it. But lots of bar owners do it.
How many women will know that the bar's doing that?
Because there's on the back of the women's toilets door where men can't go, there's a sign telling you.
Well, men can go now, sadly.
Okay.
Particularly in Scotland.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
but that is a good scheme.
But that is a good scheme. But I feel the idea of leaving the home for a start is quite difficult if you're an abused woman. You don't actually know if somebody can get out of the house depending on how they're being.
But don't you just controlled? You feel safe in a booth, don't you? Because you don't think anybody's going to rip back the curtain and come.
I don't know. I don't think I would.
What, on a busy railway station?
Yeah, definitely not. I feel
would you start confiding to a stranger in a pink box?
Yeah,
while people are walking past the railway station, I'm being abused by my husband, boyfriend, girlfriend. I'm not sure you would, Carol.
I thought it was abuse like on the station. If
No. This is referring to what's happening in your home.
Make it clearer. Make it clearer, mister.
You have to say things much more slowly with Carol Malone.
This is so rich.
Do this monosyllabically, and then she might get there. Then she might understand it.
You're not
I feel like an old married couple.
Yeah, I know. But old being the optimum. Have we got time to squeeze one other thing in? 30 seconds. Smoking.
30 seconds. Smoking up among middle-class women.
Yeah, 25% up in 10 years. Middle-class and upper-class women want to smoke more.
Why?
And have been doing.
How can
I
they
don't
afford-
know. Because
how can they afford
it, and all we ever get
packets?
told is smoking gives you wrinkles, and we're obsessed with not getting wrinkles. So
I think it's a mini act of rebellion because you can't do anything now. I went to my dentist yesterday. He said, stop drinking sparkling water. I was like,
shut up.
Is there any pleasure left in life? It's bad for your teeth, apparently. Sparkling water is just water that's got
Well, your teeth will fall out, Malone. You drink gallons.
I think there's so many things you can't do now, even drinking sparkling water.
So you're going to take off smoking?
I think it's like an act of rebellion.
Well, here's the thing. Vodka and soda. Fine for your teeth.
That is a
Fine for your teeth.
That's kamikaze activism.
Yeah, that'd be my advice.
Thank you both. Tatiana Sanchez has your news.
Carol, thank you. The top stories this hour. Questions are being asked about when the Conservative Chief Whip knew about claims an MP allegedly misused thousands of pounds of campaign funds. Reports in The Times suggest concerns were raised about Mark Menzies 3 months ago. According to the newspaper, £14,000 was transferred to Mr Menzies' personal bank accounts and spent on private medical expenses. He denies any wrongdoing but has agreed to give up the Conservative whip and will sit as an independent in the House of Commons while the allegations are investigated. In Scotland, the prescription of puberty blockers and gender-affirming hormones for children has been paused. It follows a landmark CAS review of gender services for under-18s, which revealed children had been let down by a lack of research and weak evidence on medical interventions. Ministers in Scotland have welcomed the move, but campaigners argue the decision is the wrong one. Commons leader Penny Mordaunt has confirmed MPs will consider further amendments to the Rwanda bill on Monday. The House of Lords ignored ministerial calls to back down and again last night insisted on further revisions to the bill. However, the government has promised to do whatever it needs to do to get flights off the ground to the East African nation. Support for the Conservative Party has hit a record low with just 19% of public backing, according to an Ipsos poll. The Prime Minister's satisfaction rating has also dropped to an historic low of -59, matching John Major's record. The public also appear divided on a Conservatives' leadership change, with 37% calling for a shift. Sir Keir Starmer maintains his lead in the polls, but he too faces a drop in satisfaction, down from 29% to 25% since February. And Prince Harry has officially listed the United States as his primary residence. According to documents filed in the UK, the change was made last summer. He and his wife Meghan moved to America after stepping back from royal duties in 2020. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2473 and €1.1687. The price of gold is £1,908.81 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,866 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, they're here up at noon. Good afternoon, Britain, with Tom Howard and, lovely surprise, Emma Webb. How
Good to
lovely
see you again. It's been ages.
A long time. You were a starring part of
I miss you, Andrew. I miss you.
She's
moved
on to
bigger and better
things. Well, clearly.
Do you really miss him? Yeah, of course I do.
Emma will be a great partner with Tom. Now, what are you up to this afternoon?
Well, Emily has obviously changed into Emma and
Yes.
will be with us until Tuesday, which is great fun. But we're going to be, of course, covering the big stories in Parliament and the sleaze and the scandal. But also we're going to Scotland.
Right.
Because north of the border, there's a very curious policy that's developed in primary schools.
Oh, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Shocking, actually.
Yes. LGBT reps as young as 4 years old.
I actually think it's wicked.
Child abuse.
We've had
I do
lots.
think that.
We've had lots
I
of
do.
viewers writing in saying that actually, that why not just let kids be kids?
Yeah.
Mm.
Could we just
4
do
years
the 3
old,
hours,
don't we?
reading, writing, arithmetic? Could they just not do that with 4-year-olds?
Well, it's peculiar because, of course, that's what basically Michael Gove wanted to introduce in England. And look at what's happened to English, what's they called PISA scores, the international rankings of how well our children can read. In England, it's soared up and up and up.
Yeah.
In Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, it's stagnated. Which of those 4 countries did the Gove reforms? Which one's done the best?
But on the other hand, on the other side of the coin, a bit of common sense unusually coming out of Scotland, that they've backtracked on their net zero targets
I
and
did see that.
possibly will be relinquishing their final net zero target by 2040. 2040,
They had a
2050.
2030 target for 75% reduction in CO2,
Yeah.
which they've now quietly scrapped. And, of course, the Greens are in government in Scotland. We're actually going to be talking to an environmentalist, and I'm sort of mentally preparing myself, because I'm going to have to take Humza Yousaf's side here.
God.
Cheering from the rafters, the idea that the SNP have seen sense on this issue.
It's very right. Now, what is your debate this afternoon, too? Have you got a good debate?
We will be debating whether or not we should pay for NHS appointments. So a poll has found that people are actually rather willing to pay £10 for a GP appointment as they do in France.
I think they absolutely should, because I think we talk about how much we love the NHS, don't we? But there's a total disrespect for it. If you make an appointment and then you just don't turn up.
Full of time wasters. People who go in for a chat, people who don't have anything wrong with them. And interestingly,
very sensible
this
idea.
is something Rishi Sunak proposed when he was standing to be Prime Minister a couple of years ago. Of course, he lost to Liz Truss, who then lost to a lettuce. But Rishi Sunak, when he became Prime Minister, then didn't put forward any of those
And he certainly won't do it now.
But it was an interesting thing, and he obviously put it forward because he thought it might be a bit popular, that especially Tory voters might think, hang on, this is a bit of common sense. And it might well help reduce those queues.
And, of course, Wes Streeting is now taking up the mantle of NHS privatisation.
Yes, he is. He sounds far more radical now than the Tories.
Which is just remarkable, although there is a big question. Does he have the bottle to take on the unions? Because, after all, he's sort of saying all of these grandiose things now. Will he be willing to take what will be many, many more months of strikes if he tries to change anything in the NHS? Because that's what Andrew Lansley found in
I make
early
a firm
2010s.
prediction, Tom. The most unpopular member of the Labour cabinet when they win the general election within 6 months to 12 months will be Wes Streeting, will be the health secretary, because he will not be delivering and expectations would have been raised so high, and he won't deliver.
This is the problem that Labour will have. It's so easy to say, we're going to change this, we're going to reform that, we're going to... The thing is, they will run into the same problems that the last government has, indeed that Liz Truss ran into. There will be institutional resistance to what they do. And the thing is, if you don't have, frankly, the cojones to take on some of the elements of the state that want things to stay as they are, I think we might well have more strikes under a Wes Street Health Secretary.
I love that word, cojones, don't you? Anyway, all that and more. Join these two at midday. Now you're through. Now, see, I thought you were working the autocue, Pierce.
You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
But
we have
he
to
shouldn't be
speak. We
doing
have to
that.
speak quite slowly with Carol. Stay with us.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The perception of a crime being committed is not based on whether that person intended to commit a crime or not, but whether the victim, in inverted commas, or anybody else for that matter who happened to hear whatever was said, determines that it was motivated by malice or ill will. Most of these things come out in heated exchanges or in, very casual exchanges. And then somebody says, oh, I'm offended or I'm hurt or I'm whatever because this was clearly malicious and it's against me as a black person or a transgender or sexuality, whatever it might be. And somebody says, I perceive this to be motivated by hate. Now, at that point, what is the reasonable test that anybody could apply as to what was in somebody's mind at the time? You don't know what I'm thinking now. I don't know what you're thinking now. Why is it that a crime can be committed on the basis of what somebody is alleged to be thinking?
Well, that's also how discrimination often works, because people have worked out these days that saying something or sending an email like one I received some years ago that said, let's go round her place with pickaxe handles and balaclavas and see what we can do. Now, that's an email that was sent about me. People have worked out that you don't do that. But from the circumstance of what happens, if racial taunts were being shouted, if taunts about someone's protected characteristic were being shouted in the run-up to what then happened, it would be pretty obvious that that was a hate crime.
But we know, for example, that street preachers have been arrested merely for quoting the Bible and without actually intending, anything beyond that.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Now, lots of you getting in touch. Of course, you visit gbnews.com/you'll say. Lots of people, Carol, they're excised by lots of things.
And that's what Mark says. If Rwanda is so dangerous, someone should tell Arsenal FC, as, quotes, visit Rwanda features on the arms of their kit.
It does, actually.
In grand advertising.
That's a very good point.
Or is Rwanda not as dangerous as the lefties say?
Well, Mark says, no, Lauren says, though, takes a different view. Rwanda is a waste of time and money. Even I, sitting all the way in South Africa, can see it clear as a day, flogging a dead horse. South Africa, you see, GB News, we get all
That's
around
very good.
the world.
That's very good.
I'd love to know what part of South Africa you're in, because I think Cape Town's to die for.
Now, Helen says she's shocked by the story about the LGBT, about 4-year-olds being, this group asking 4-year-olds to be ambassadors for, and asking them whether they're gay, trans or whatever. She says, I'm shocked by 4-year-olds being indoctrinated in terms of LGBT+. Leave children to enjoy their innocence as long as possible.
And, of course, this week, Lucy Fraser, the Culture Secretary,
Yes.
she spoke up very well.
Yeah.
She had a summit with sporting leaders, including Sharon Davis, who we had on the programme this week, the Olympic silver medalist in swimming. And she effectively said to sporting bodies, and she means the English Cricket Board and the football...
And darts.
And, you can't have trans... Men who transitioning to women, competing in women's sports, because it simply isn't fair. And it was a voice of common sense.
Complete. Martina Navratilova, who we all respect as a member of the LGBT community, tennis player, she just said, it's cheating. She says that's simple. She says, no male bodies in women's sport. And it really is as simple as that, isn't it? That sentence would stop all the chaos.
And often, I don't wish to be disrespectful to people who do sport, but some of these men who then are transitioning, who then compete in women's sports, go from absolute mediocrity, but then they succeed and win in the women's sports because they are, by definition, physically stronger.
And as Martina said, she says it's insane, she said it's cheating, and she said it goes even farther. She said the argument is simple. A man can become a woman, declare himself, enter all the female tournaments, win lots of money, and then go back to being a man again.
I know. Well, and of course there's a marathon runner taking part in the London Marathon
and where
on Sunday.
We
thought was joining us, but presumably is still running in training. But this particular runner has competed as a man, a woman, and a non-binary. And what we were going to ask her was which category will she be running in the London Marathon on Sunday. And to be fair, to anyone who can do a marathon, that's quite an achievement.
But to be fair to her, she says there should be a trans category. And that's... No, but there should.
Okay.
Because you can't expect women to unquestionably compete.
Why can't she continue running as a man?
Well, there's that as well, but you can't ask women to just not question the fact they're having to run against people who a couple of years ago were men. Because, as all of and this guy says, and there's another athlete she's a trans athlete called Tina Daniels, she says there should be a separate category because she says the benefits are, even if you take testosterone suppressants for many years, the benefits are still huge against women.
And I think we should take it from the great authority, Caitlyn Jenner, who transitioned from man to woman. He, as a man, won the decathlon gold medal. That is 10 Olympic sports. And he says, he's now Caitlyn Jenner, it would be outrageous for him to have then competed in the female category because of the enormous strength and weight advantage.
We have to accept, Piers, that the world has changed.
It has.
It has changed, and those changes, sport needs to address those changes. And so that means that we could have different categories, but it does not mean chucking out the women's category. No. And it does not mean biological women having to compete against men.
And Sharon Davis had to put up with in the 70s and 80s, competing against Eastern European athletes whose bodies were filled with steroids and drugs, so they had an unfair advantage, and we now know some of them had to give back their medals. And I'm afraid it's the same advantage. I'm not saying they're cheating, but they have the same advantage that the people who are filled with steroids have.
There's a definite... I think it's... I wish this trans runner had come, because I think it's grossly selfish of trans women to compete against biological women. It's just not fair.
Well, it should
be... It's not ethical, it's not fair.
It should be stopped, and it's carrying on still in football and cricket, and I'm not quite sure why.
Well, and darts, we saw the other week when there was a darts player won the tournament easily. It was the trans woman darts player won the tournament really. So it isn't fair, and it's not fair. A lot of women are now, a lot of respected athletes are pulling out of the sport because they will not compete against trans women. It's not a level playing field, and we need that.
Do keep your views coming in. We've still got. By the way, I've got one here on Rishi Sunak.
Come on.
Don't get many saying he's a wonderful Tory leader.
No, you don't.
This says Rishi Sunak must go now. Bring in a new leader quickly and challenge hapless Starmer. I support Suella Braverman, but there are several others. Anyone but Sunak. Now, still to come, guess what? Another scandal has hit the Tory party as the MP Mark Menzies has been suspended from the parliamentary party over the alleged misuse of campaign funds. It's a bizarre story, this. He called one of his constituency officers at 3 in the morning saying he was being held against his will by some men in his flat and he needed some money. stay with us. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Welcome to this latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's a fine day across the south today, but further north, a lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle as well. It was a chilly old start. Temperatures slowly picking up with a bit of sunshine in the south. Further north, though, sunshine in short supply because a set of weather fronts have been trickling southwards, bringing the cloud and the outbreaks of rain. It won't rain all day, some drier spells, particularly in eastern Scotland, but the damp and drizzly weather is now spreading in across northern England. Much of the south, though, dry and fine, clouding over the Midlands and Wales, but we'll hold on to some hazy sunshine across southern England and East Anglia. And after that cold start, temperatures could creep up to 15, 16 degrees here, but it's a cooler day as the winds pick up further north with the outbreaks of rain. That rain will continue to trickle south, so it'll turn damp over the Midlands, Lincolnshire, East Anglia through this evening. Patchy rain then spreading across the southeast overnight, much of the southwest staying dry. The winds noticed coming down from the north, but actually it'll be a much milder night tonight compared to last night because there'll be much more cloud around, temperatures mostly holding up at 7 or 8 Celsius. So won't be as chilly first thing tomorrow morning. Will be quite a drab start, cloud and rain over Wales and southeast England. That should tend to clear away, but lots of showers will come in over central and eastern parts. A much brighter day for western Scotland tomorrow. Northern Ireland cheering up too. There's some good sunny spells developing in many areas through the afternoon, but the wind's still coming down from the north, so still bringing a fairly chilly feel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers. I agree. And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Another month and another scandal is at the Tory party. This time it's the backbench MP Mark Menzies who's lost the whip over alleged misuse of campaign funds. He issued a statement saying... Do you want to read that, Carol?
OK, it says, I strongly dispute the allegations put to me. I have fully complied with all the rules for declarations. As there is an investigation ongoing, I will not be commenting further.
This is a bizarre story where he effectively was locked in a room in a house, but he says allegedly by some men and needed money to pay them off. I just have to tell you, Carol, when Boris Johnson won that election in 2019, the Tories had a majority of 80. That majority is now down to about 52. Quite a bit of...
Because, of course, this will spark a by-election. He's going to have to
There'll be a by-election. Well, our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, is in our Westminster studio. Olivia, here we go again, but this one is especially odd.
Everything about this story is frankly absolutely bizarre. As you say, Andrew, what seems to have happened, what the allegation is that Mark Menzies was at home at 3:15 in the morning. He called his former campaign manager, a 78-year-old woman, a current Tory party volunteer, and said, I'm locked in a room with some bad people. Can you transfer me £5,000 from the party campaign funds? The Tory volunteer said said no. And a few hours later, Mark Menzies rang his current campaign manager and asked for £6,500 for the same purpose. She sent him that money from her own personal bank account, and it was later reimbursed from Tory campaign funds. Obviously, if that is proved to be the case, that is really not okay. And it also isn't the only allegation that Mark Menzies is facing. Altogether, he's accused of taking £14,000 from party campaign funds to use towards private medical bills. Well, that's what he claims anyway. This is very, very tricky for Rishi Sunak, not only because, as you say, it makes his majority, erodes his majority even more, but also there are questions about the way the Conservative Party handled this. Apparently, this was reported to CCHQ 3 months ago, but action has only just been taken. Also, Mark Menzies relinquished the whip himself. Perhaps it was a case of jumping before he was pushed, but when an MP steps out of line to an extent like this, you would expect the whip to be removed from them. I think it leaves Rishi Sunak open to allegations that he's just too weak to control his own party, something that he really can't afford in the run-up to the local elections.
And we could get another by-election, Olivia, because if there's a petition in his local constituency, I think it has to get to 10% or something of the electorate, another by-election, even though it's a big majority of 16,000, that would vanish in a by-election.
Well, absolutely. I feel like I've been through this so many times before in recent months with Conservative MPs having to step down. But yes, we could well be facing a by-election. And these days, 16,000, a majority of 16,000, as you say, Andrew, just isn't enough to be counted on at all.
Well, that's Olivia Rutley. That's Carol Malone. We're done.
Are we done?
Carol Malone is back with me on Monday. That's it from Britain's Newsroom. Coming up next, it's Tom and Emma Webb.
It's an enormous day because the Prime Minister has faced defeats on all fronts. His majority is down from what was once 80 to just 43. This as the House of Lords rejects Rwanda once again. And we learn of more asylum-seeking criminality.
Also, two huge stories out of Scotland this morning. We've seen the Scottish Government backtrack on their targets to meet net zero by 2030.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers,